Coverage of the Needham Select Board is brought to you by Louise Condon Realty, representing buyers and sellers since 1985.
Thank you. I call this meeting of April 13th, 2022 to order of the Select Board. It is 6 p.m. Before we begin tonight, I would just like a moment of silence of Bob McEwen, who's a former DPW director in Needham, passed away, and many highlights he had for the town. He started in 1953 as an assistant engineer with the town of Needham, and then in '67 became the superintendent of public works, and then of course the DPW position was formed, and he became director of that. I was actually looking through on my spare time the old town meeting records, and I know he was recognized in '96 for his contributions to Needham for 30 years, and I just want to have a moment of silence for his passing. Thank you. First item on the agenda before is to swear in Ms. Heidi Frail, and I want to congratulate you, and I know I speak for the board, congratulating you on your election for the Select Board. It's going to be an exciting time. I know you're going to enjoy it as much as all of us do. Put Needham in good hands and move Needham forward in the best possible way. So thank you for running and congratulations. And with that, I asked for the swear-in, Ms. Eaton.
Yes, and congratulations. Thank you. Would you like to raise your right hand and repeat after me? After I say I, repeat your name. I,
Heidi Frail,
do solemnly swear and affirm
do solemnly swear and affirm
that I will faithfully and impartially
that I will faithfully and impartially
discharge and perform
discharge and perform
all the duties incumbent on me
all the duties incumbent on me
as a member of the Select Board
as a member of the Select Board
for the town of Needham,
for the town of Needham,
according to the best of my ability
according to the best of my ability
and understanding, agreeably to the rules and regulations
agreeably to the rules and regulations
of the Constitution
and
the laws of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts,
the laws of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts,
and the rules, regulations, and bylaws
and the rules, regulations, and bylaws
of the town of Needham.
of the town of Needham.
So help me God.
So help me God.
I
Heidi Frail,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Commonwealth of
to
Massachusetts
the Commonwealth of Massachusetts
and will support the Constitution thereof.
and will support the Constitution
And
thereof. I, Heidi Frail,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States.
that I will support the Constitution of the United States.
You are so sworn. So all newly elected and appointed and employees have to take the mandatory online training, receive the open meeting law, and the conflict of interest. So I have that for you. If you have any questions, you can just call me. Okay, congratulations and best wishes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Eaton. Before we get to board reorganization, there is a member of the public who wishes to speak during the public comment period. Mr. Heller, if you may please approach. This public comment period is limited to 3 minutes. The board will take comments, but per our policy, we do not respond. We just take it in and take it under advisement. And with that, the floor is yours, Mr. Heller.
Hi, congratulations. I was going to be here the last meeting, but I was late. But I'm actually encouraged to be here for your first meeting for my comments. I'm here on 3 capacities. One as the chairperson of Solid Waste Disposal and Recycling Advisory Committee. I'm also here as a town meeting member and as a citizen. I want to just express my disappointment and a disagreement of a decision that the board has made. At our last committee meeting, the solid waste disposal approved recommending increasing of some fees that were presented to us by the superintendent and DPW, and we unanimously supported those increases. This has been a long discussion around all the particulars of making those kind of recommendations, looking at the market and the timing as such. So after it was unanimous, and I asked Dave Davidson, when will I be presenting these recommendations to the board? Usually it's pretty soon after those decisions because of the budget cycle and so on. And he informed me that it wasn't going to be brought to the board until June. And he expressed that the reason was because we're in the process of reorganization and because we wanted to give an orientation period to the new select board member. Now, this is where, there's money on the table, that we're just those increased fees, and they've been behind a little bit just out of caution. So there's just more money on the table by this delay. And I disagree with the delay, although I'm sure you're happy with, the opportunity to have some, not have to hit the ground running as so much as Marcus and everybody else did. But I disagree with it because of, just because the last person came in and made, in here, made a big deal about it, okay? And I operate by the rule, personal responsibility, all right? You get a management position, a leadership position, you do your research. You read a year's worth of minutes before you get to a meeting. You don't say, oh, I can't decide on that because I wasn't around for previous discussions and I couldn't vote on it. Or how do I get up to speed like that? Well, you read the minutes. And I speak not...
You have 20 seconds, Mr. Heller, sorry.
I believe that almost every town meeting member agrees with me because they know how town government works and what it means to be prepared for being a representative, okay? And as a citizen, I also know that there are many citizens who agree with me, and not just one individual pointing out some difficulties. Doesn't mean that we need to amend how we operate from personal responsibility. You've all done it, you're all competent, and that we don't have to adjust things for incompetence. And that's my feelings. I don't know if you're going to take it up for our agenda to discuss it later on, but those are my feelings I felt to share.
I appreciate you sharing it. Thank you, Mr. Heller. Have a pretty... Yes.
I'm not responsive, but I just wanted to be clear that the select board did not make that decision. We made the decision based on staff and the department.
I understand. And it's something... Okay. Thank you, Mr. Heller.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda, board reorganization, which we do every year after an election with the rotation. And of course, nothing is guaranteed for positions, but it's up to members to make motions for these positions. I do want to say before we get to that Mary Ann, as my vice chair, I may say I think it was a terrific team this year. I've been in leadership 2 years. I want to thank the prior chair, Mo Handel, for his leadership when I was vice chair. We were just beginning COVID getting in COVID when I was vice chair. We got through that, and then when you became vice chair, we had to continue that, and we had a lot of obstacles. We had a new board, a lot of turnover, people leaving, people getting elected, and it's been challenging, but I think we came through it better on the other side, and I look forward to your leadership as chair of this board, and it's been a pleasure, and it's been a pleasure working with this team. So thank you, Ms. Cooley.
Thank you, Matt.
So with that, we get into the agenda item marked board reorganization. And the first item is to nominate a chair of this board. Is there a motion?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to nominate a new chair.
Okay, and who would that be?
Mary Ann Cooley.
Okay, we have a motion for Mary Ann.
I second that.
Okay, motion and second. Is there any other nominations? Hearing none, we come to the vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Congratulations, Mary Ann.
You didn't ask if I was opposed?
I thought you would. That's good. Well deserved. I will move my
Do
seat.
one flip.
This is always the dance that we do. There you are.
I want to start actually by thanking Mr. Borelli, who I agree. I think overall, it's been an interesting year. It had an interesting start. There were a few perturbations in the force, but we all know that the cracks are what let the light come in, and that is where we are. I'm feeling very optimistic, and I'm excited about where we are. So I do want to thank Matt for all of that as we've come through this year and navigating some really interesting meetings and navigating some more boring meetings. And I continue to say that good government is actually boring for the most part, and I'm hoping and praying for a very boring year, but you never know. So with that, I know that Matt still has an opportunity. He could be nominated for something else. You don't know, but he's looking forward to a little more free time, and we have something that relates to his free time.
Thank you. Should I open it or wait? I should open it. Okay.
We'll let you open it.
Hopefully it's not a glitter bomb.
That would be a good thought. We'll have to remember that one.
Oh, taped up nicely.
A good tape job's always good on a...
Oh, look at that. It's ooh, you must know me well. And it's even a bass, you got the right fish. So thank you very much. That is great. I really appreciate that. And oh, that's terrific. Perfect. Thank you. Sincerely.
You have to notice the small details, is what I'm going to say.
Okay.
Look at the fish.
Oh, look at that. All right. All names of board members, names of staff. Ooh. Miles.
We'll be part of Matt's fishing routine now, so memorialized.
Thank you again.
There you go. So I would now welcome a motion for vice chair of the board.
Madam Chairwoman, can I make a motion to nominate a vice chair?
Yes, Mr. Keene. Who would you nominate?
I would nominate Marcus Nelson.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. Do we have any other nominations? If there are none, then I would call for a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Congratulations, Mr. Nelson. Yay.
Thank you so much.
So, and the final position that I would ask for nominations for is for the role of, actually we have two different roles, right? For Secretary Clerk of the Board.
I move that Kevin Keene be Secretary Clerk of the Board.
And I'll need a second.
Second.
Any other nominations? All in favor for Mr. Keene to be Secretary Clerk of the Board?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Congratulations, Mr. Keene.
Yes.
Hooray. All right. We are in position, so we're not going to rotate now. We've already rotated. We also have two further roles. So we need a motion to nominate and approve the committee secretary for the Select Board, Miles Tucker, and the recording secretary for the Select Board, Mary Hunt. Do I have a motion?
I move that, Madam Chair.
I second that.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Unanimous vote. Congratulations. Thanks to both of you for everything you do for us. All right, that brings us to the next item on our agenda.
Madam Chair, we still have the calendar.
Oh,
If I may, Madam Chair, it was brought to my attention today that November 8th is Election Day, so we'd probably be recommending the Wednesday, the November 9th, but certainly willing to hear what the board has to say, so we could adopt it this way and then amend it.
all right. So I need a motion to approve our regular meeting schedule for the year.
So moved?
I second that.
Any discussion? We'll investigate whether it should be the 8th or the 9th, most likely moving to the 9th. Meanwhile, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We have adopted our meeting schedule. I hope everybody's found their calendar to plug in all those days. All right, the next item on our agenda this evening is a public hearing, a dangerous dog hearing. So this is a hearing of the Select Board held pursuant to General Laws, Chapter 140, Section 157, and Section 3.7 of the town's general bylaws for the purpose of determining whether the dog named Axel of 233 West Street is a dangerous dog, a nuisance dog, and in either case to determine the appropriate remedial action to be taken. I note for the record that this is the Select Board's second hearing concerning Axel. The last hearing was held on January 11th, 2022, and the Select Board determined at the conclusion of the hearing that Axel and Maya, another dog in the care of the same owner that resides at 233 West Street, were dangerous dogs. After making that determination, the Select Board made the following orders. That the board ordered that when removed from the premises of the owner or the premises of the person keeping the dogs shall be securely and humanely muzzled and restrained with a chain or other tethering device. The board ordered that the owner or keeper of the dogs provide proof of additional skilled training to rectify the violent tendencies of the dogs, and the board ordered that the owner or the keeper of the dog take steps to secure the home in which the dogs reside to ensure there are no additional inadvertent releases of the dogs outside the home. At this point, if I could ask Chief Schlittler to come to the table, we will need to swear you in. Good evening, Chief, and thank you, Mr. Heap. In accordance with Chapter 140, Section 157, the complainant, Chief Schlittler, must be examined under oath as part of this hearing. Therefore, Chief Schlittler, please stand, raise your right hand, and repeat after me. I, John Schlittler, do solemnly swear that the testimony I am about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Thank you. All right. So, in terms of presentation, the Select Board will first hear from Chief Schlittler, then from the dog's owner or counsel if they wish to speak or present evidence, and then after that the board will take comment or evidence from anyone else in attendance that wishes to speak. So with that, Chief, let me turn it over to you for updates since our last hearing.
Thank you very much. I'll just give a brief summary of the last incident that took place on March 14th, 2022 of this year. On that date, officers were dispatched to the area of West Street and Burt Street for a report of a person and or dog being attacked by another dog. Upon arrival, officers met Miss Andrews, who indicated that she was walking her dog on a leash when a husky grabbed her dog by the mouth and began to violently shake her dog. Miss Andrews indicated she is familiar with the dog and it lives at 233 West Street. Miss Andrews left the scene to seek medical attention for her dog. Officers went to 233 West Street to speak with the owner. The officer spoke with Larissa Badawai, the owner's daughter. Ms. Badawai stated that she heard commotion outside in the front of her house, and when she opened the door, she saw Axel outside and let him back in the house. Axel, by Larissa's admission, was neither muzzled or leashed, nor could she explain how Axel was able to get out of the house. Miss Andrews, in a later interview, stated she was walking Lucy and stopped to clean up after Lucy when she observed the husky right in front of her. The husky then picked up Lucy into its jaws and shook Lucy off the ground and shook it violently. After screaming at the husky, Miss Andrews finally kicked the husky, which caused him to drop Lucy. After that, Animal Control Officer Palmer quarantined the dog for 10 days, and Miss Russell was cited for town bylaw, disturbing the peace, owner of a dog that bites, subsequent offense. And during a later conversation with Miss Russell, she indicated to Officer Palmer that she believes the batteries for the electric fence were not charged, which could have contributed to the axle getting out. This incident is in addition to several other incidents, the first being 10/16/2021, when Axel and Meyer attacked a small dog. 10/18/21, both Axel and Meyer were walking outside of a quarantine order given by Animal Control Officer Palmer. On 12/16/21, both dogs exited from the front door and attacked a small dog. And then this incident on 3/14/22.
Thank you, Chief. So we welcome at this point the dog's owner or their counsel. I understand that both of them are on Zoom, and I don't know if either of them wish to speak. It looks like we've got a hand up. So if you can move over, the dog's owner first, I guess, if the owner wishes to speak, or the dog's owner's counsel. The dog's attorney. Okay. And the dog's attorney, as I understand, is Mr. Jeremy Cohen.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Cohen. Welcome.
Can you see me?
We can see you.
Okay. Thank you for the opportunity. Congratulations on your new position. And now you have to deal with this as the first item. So, I'm here tonight representing Diana because I just want to make sure you're on Zoom still. It's very okay. There you are. Because more can be done. This dog, Axel, I have found out is not neutered. Neutering Axel will make a difference in his behavior. He's about a year old. He is undergoing an ultrasound this month, trying to get an appointment for one to determine if his body's ready for a neuter. There is a physical issue with him, which the veterinarians are trying to determine before they neuter him. But more importantly, I have to start off by saying what you need to do tonight is get to the right decision the right way. You certainly put a lot of faith in Diana after the last hearing, and it's disappointing as to what happened. But to get to the right decision the right way, there's certain things that I need to know as part of the law firm Boston Dog Lawyers, and that my team would need to know, which is why on March 31st, I asked for additional time so that we could put on an adequate defense. During that time, I would have had a veterinary behaviorist evaluate the dog, because nobody at this hearing, including myself, knows anything about dog behavior or knows enough whether to decide if Axel should be killed or not. And it's certainly uncommon to euthanize a dog who has only been aggressive to dogs. There's been no human aggression here, and I think that's important to remember. But what has happened is people in the neighborhood are upset, they're afraid, they're fearful, and I would be too if I was in that neighborhood. Fortunately, these dogs have not shown a tendency to want to go after people. They've shown a tendency, well, you may label it a violent tendency, they've shown a tendency to go after small animals that look like prey. But Axel's a year old. My client did engage in the training that you ordered, a 1-week board and train, and also has retained the services now of a weekly trainer, Mike Wagereich of Canine East in Woburn. And so she brings the dogs there once a week, and she actually is working with them, and her family is going and working with them at the same time. But I think we need to know whether or not Axel, what's driving Axel, and whether or not this is a dog that can have this trained out of him, can be desensitized, and whether or not we have a dog owner that can do the homework required to train the dog properly. But to do that, we do need a veterinary behavioral evaluation. Now, that may seem believe it or not, they exist. Board-certified veterinary behaviorists. You always have the option to euthanize. This is not yet a euthanasia case. As I said, we need to find out about Axel. So in trying to get to the right decision the right way, my concern is that I was not granted any additional time for this. And my concern is that I asked for all documentation, and only yesterday did I get the second half of the documentation. That's just not right. It's not fair, and it doesn't speak well that this process is going properly. Now, I watched the last hearing. I was comfortable with it, but I'm not sure why your town council could not have afforded me some of the professional courtesies so that you all can get to the right decision the right way. Here, some of the commitments Diane is making, because whatever she's doing, it's just not working. She has to put up a fence. Nothing will give the community the sense of security and also keep Axel, and Maya seems to just go along for the ride. There's been no allegations in the police reports that Maya has been a biter. She needs a dig-proof fence to be put in her yard. Also, but that would take an order from the board, or she will do it on her own if she can keep Axel, but she tried the other methods the board suggested. This electric collar is good as a backup, but I don't accept excuses, batteries die or stuff. They're just not effective to do what the town needs to be done here, and that's to have a fence put up. I know that Diana is putting up a gate in the front of her house so that if the dogs were to get out the front door, there's a backup now, or there will be a backup now so they can't get out. We already know she replaced the door that was broken. She's committed to, if she's walking the dogs, one dog per one adult. So never again should these dogs be walked simultaneously by the same person. The reason I have hope here for Axel and for Diana is that at the dog park, none of these incidents happen at the dog park. And she goes to the dog park a lot, and we have no reports of these things happening. So there's something about, there are some redeemable qualities about Axel and his interactions with other dogs. It could be that at the dog park, he plays with like-sized dogs rather than the smaller dogs that he tends to bully or confuse as prey. I know that, and Diana is certainly happy to speak again, you know, and watching the last hearing, I know there was a lot of discussion about the nature of the dogs, but this is about the nature of the owner tonight. And can we trust this owner to follow through on what are now more severe consequences, especially in light of the expense of a fence, and the expense of the animal behaviorist, and the expense of the ongoing training, which she has had 3 sessions already with K9 East. The expense, but the necessity of having Axel neutered, and the agreement that until the fence is put up, to keep doing what she's doing, but to make sure that the dogs are only in the yard one at a time, and with a muzzle and a leash, and an adult. She is obviously responsible for these veterinary bills. I've looked at the records, and gotta hope that the dog can pull through, but that's a bad bite. But I think in the history of big dogs and little dogs, in the cases I've handled, a big dog is just their bite is crushing, whether they mean to or not, when it comes to small dogs. And I think a lot has to be read into the fact that he has not gone after the people. And well, I'd like to reserve a spot to speak towards the end. The statute certainly allows you room to order some of the things that we just discussed. And it also allows you to fine Diana, again, in a more significant amount for what's happened. There's no doubt that Axel remains a dangerous dog, but I think there's plenty of things we can still do to correct that. So Diana's available if you want to ask her questions. And thank you for the time. I know the neighborhood's upset. I am with you too. The law doesn't allow the town to rehome the dog anymore, to move the dog along. But I just don't think we're at the point where this dog should be euthanized. And we have to put this pressure and responsibility, not on the board, but on Diana, and let her decide if this dog's going to live or die. Because after the next set of remedies, if you choose to put them in. Then if that can't work, then there's just, she's made the decision for everybody. Because I know making a euthanasia decision is horrible, it's pressure, and it's not something you want to do. So instead, I'm asking that you put it on her one more time. Thank you.
I would like to know if Ms. Rizzo would like to make any statement before we move to questions. What, Miles? Here. She's coming over. She's coming over? Okay. Good evening, Ms. Rizzo. So I just wanted to give you a chance to make any statement you would like before we turn to questions based on the new information from Chief Schlittler or from your attorney, and from other inputs that have come to the board. Can you please unmute?
Oh, can you hear me now?
There you go.
Right.
We can hear you now.
All right, so I want to thank the board for giving us the chance to speak in this case, and thanks Jeremy for putting everything together. I'm very nervous now because I know that what's going on, like it's a big decision that I'm taking, a big responsibility that I'm willing to take. And I will take whatever it takes to keep Axel. I noticed today, I was talking to attorney Jeremy, that I, by mistake, called the dogs as my kids. And I think everybody who owns a dog, they consider the dogs as part of the family. And he's just a teenager now, and he needs proper guidance. And I believe I did not provide enough, because maybe I'm not supposed to say that, but I counted on my family to help a little bit, but they were not ready. I used to have a husky before, and I had Maya for 4 years, and we had no problems with that. I wasn't working as much as I'm working now, and I had enough time to train them. I thought, like with that amount of training, Axel will be good, and he's improving a lot. But every dog, just like every human, like they're different than each other's. And I also trusted, sadly, the electrical fence, which it didn't go out of charge. It just, their system just, like the battery goes down without you have any clue to know, except for have to test it, every day probably. So in order to keep Axel, I know that I have to secure everything, because he's at this stage where he's exploring his boundaries. And he needs to be guided very well. So, and the boundaries has to be secured. I will be putting a fence, and I'll be securing the front door, and I'll be securing every single access where he can just slip, just in case anybody, opened the door and they got out. That will be secured. He's already secured all day at home with a leash. And the gate on the deck is secured with metal wires and with wooden logs, and the only way that he can go in the backyard is with me on a muzzle and on a leash. And I told everybody in the house that no one is allowed to touch them except for me for now until you're ready. And that's why we're going to K9 East for reactivity. There are about 30 dogs there. And the dogs are trained not to react with other dogs that have the same issues. And Axel is showing a lot of obedience on a leash. And when they have like free time, he started understanding what's required from him. So I know it's on me now, and it's a lot of financial pressure, a lot of emotional and mental pressure, because I will have to be, for a while, also scared that Axel will get out of the house and, you know, like hurt someone, but that will not happen because I will physically secure everything.
Okay. Ms. Rosal, this incident happened back on March 14th, so we're about a month on from that. I think you're talking about future actions you're going to take. Are there any actions that you've taken actually over the last month?
So that's what I took. Axel is not allowed beyond the walls of the house without a leash. So if he's sitting outside on the deck is secured. I secured the gate so he doesn't knock it down, and he's always on a leash. Always, and the leash is secured to the rails of the deck. Also the door, although I changed the door, my neighbor was very generous to come and help me change the hinges in a way that even if somebody forgot the door open, it will just slam by itself, and there's no way that the door will just open.
Okay. I have one other question before I open it up to the board. Your attorney said, quote, "She is obviously responsible for the veterinary bills."
Yeah.
It's my understanding that your neighbor, Ms. Andrews, has written to you about veterinary bills, but has not had any response from you. So in fact, it's new information, I think, to all of us, if you were to acknowledge your responsibility for those bills.
Yeah, my daughter handed the bill for me, I think 2 days ago, and they gave me till May 7th to pay the bill, and they will get the check.
And have you had any other conversation with Ms. Andrews?
I didn't.
Okay.
I'm not sure. You know, like sometimes, you know, people that have traumatic incident caused by other people, I'm not sure if they want to talk to them.
All right. Questions from the board?
Madam Chair?
Mr. Borelli.
Thank you. It's a very emotional time for all those involved, and I think you really hit the nail on the head when you said dogs are part of people's families. But, you know, I'm looking at this, and these are 3 families, and I'm not talking about your own, but these are 3 families that have been completely shattered because of the actions of your animals. So I want to keep them in mind as well as you when we talk about, you know, how destructive this behavior has been to members of people's families. You know, I think looking at this, we have to think what's also in the best interest of Axel. And, you know, the options that we have in front of us, I think clearly euthanasia, no, is not in the best interest, but the other option is really not going to provide a good life for Axel, in my opinion. And I think the best interest as we move forward would be, you know, to take someone, we can't order it, but to rehome this animal and your dog and give a better life than what we can impose. I guess lastly, when we talk about euthanasia of the animal, you know, if it does come to that, and I'm not, you know, I'm leaning towards the other things that we can do, the confinement, and, you know, kind of after the last hearing, we gave a little bit of a break. We did talk about fencing the entire yard, and, you know, we went back and forth with that and tried to, in a good faith effort, say that, you know, this will work the way you had it set up, and it clearly didn't. So I would say if there is an option in the future, if this happens again of euthanasia, that's not our issue. You brought that on yourself if this happens again in some manner. So I think if we do go, and I don't know how the board's going to go, but if we do go with the, you know, confinement, et cetera, not euthanasia, I think it's been warned that that's the direction we will go next. I do have a question, and I guess this is to town council as far as neutered. That is something that the board can order? I know it's been seemed to be brought up as, you know, we can do that by agreement, would that be?
That is among the remedies that the board can order.
It is. Okay.
And the only scenario in which that wouldn't occur is if the statute provides the dog owner an opportunity to provide a letter from a vet saying that that's not medically appropriate.
Okay.
But if the board orders it, the burden then falls to the dog owner to provide effectively expert opinion as to why that shouldn't happen with respect to this particular dog.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Other questions?
Madam Chair, may I ask a question?
Ms. Frail?
I want to just clarify this business of neutering. It's my understanding, and I'm not a dog owner, so that large dogs do become aggressive, and so this is like a standard way to sort of make sure that that doesn't cause problems. But I don't know what the standard age of neutering is. Does anybody know that? It just seems like this maybe is a standard remedy that could have already taken place.
So Mr. Cohen?
So
Attorney Cohen?
the thing with Axel is he has one descended testicle and one undescended testicle. And so the problem is that's going to make it a complicated neuter if the other testicle doesn't descend. So the purpose of the ultrasound is to see if invasive surgery will be needed, or if it's just a matter of time that just a simple neuter can take place. So the age, and I spoke to Diane about this today, and certainly it's a great question, at what age? Most people want it for a year or later, and Axel's right about there. And my point to Diana was that a neutered dog is better than a dead dog. So if she has to neuter sooner than she would want to, that's a consequence here, but that's what's under the law. And it doesn't have to be by agreement, Mr. Borelli. It can be just ordered by the board.
Other questions from board members? Attorney Heap, is it an option to rehome a dog still at this point?
It is. That is an option that the dog owner can attempt to undertake on their own, but that is not among the remedies that the board can order. One of the things, the board has a range of remedies available to it, but one of the possible remedies that the statute specifically says the board cannot order is that the dog be removed from the town of Needham.
Okay. Important to understand. Any other questions that people might have?
May I, Madam Chair?
Yes, you may.
Ms. Heap, if we did a order to euthanize, but put a time, sort of a deadline on it to say you can rehome, or in 2 weeks we will execute the order, would that be allowable?
I would, in that scenario, I would not include in your order any mention of rehoming, because that is, again, not something that the board can require.
Okay.
If the board were to order the dog to be euthanized, but put an outside time limit on it, I think that would be perfectly appropriate.
Okay, thank you.
I think it's important to recognize, while people are considering if they have other questions, that while I understand Attorney Cohen has made clear that all the incidents have involved other dogs, not people, at least the incidents that are currently on record. And so maybe I should ask first, are there any other incidents that we're not aware of with Axel or with Maya that might have involved an individual? I would take an answer either from Ms. Russell or from Attorney Cohen.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know you were, I thought you were putting it to the group. I was waiting to see if there was a question out there. My understanding from talking to Diana is 0. My understanding from reading through all the paperwork and anything that was worthy of being reported, there's no reference to a human bite by Axel or Maya.
So I understand that what's been reported is limited to bites of animals. That's why I asked if there was anything of which we might not be aware, but...
Diana, excuse me, are you aware that Axel has bit a person in the past?
No, both of them, they never did. And actually, they like all the neighborhood kids, they love them and they play with them. And I have tons of video where they play with even babies.
Okay, she just had that answer, that question. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And the other thing that I do think is important to recognize is that we have had a note from at least someone else in the neighborhood who has indicated that they are, in fact, afraid to walk in that neighborhood with their dog any further. So I don't think that they're the only ones who feel that way. Certainly Ms. Andrews also has reflected that her animal and she no longer walk down that street. So there is certainly considerable concern on the part of some people that's been expressed to the board.
And that's why I expressed it as well, because I would have concern right now too. I'm a pet owner. I'm with everyone. We're trying to find a way to resolve this.
All right. Any other questions?
Madam Chair, I guess as far as a delayed euthanization, I understand the idea, and I think that would give time for other options, but my concern is that as the date approaches, it's going to be reaching out in further discussion on this issue. So I'd just rather make a decision with one way or the other, with the understanding that if we do the confinement, that the next time it will be much more severe than it is now. But I'm leaning towards the confinement and hoping that the owner will look for other options to rehome this dog, because I don't think this confinement is in the best interest of Axel, but that would be the owner's decision, and also neutering the animal.
Madam Chair?
Ms. Frail.
What enforcement or site visit or whatever happens with, if we were to recommend confinement, how would we know that that was executed properly?
Chief?
We could have the animal control officer schedule visits to determine if they're following the regulations or guidelines by the board.
And could that include also the neutering procedure?
Would probably ask for a note
to make sure that
to indicate
happened.
that had happened, yes.
Thank you.
And I just sit here and I think, since the last hearing in January, right, we understood in January that Axel was not able to work and honor the electric fence, and certainly we've now seen evidence of that occurring. There's lots of discussions about other ways to help with that confinement in terms of other fencing in the yard, but no actions have been taken in that direction at this point. So I think the board needs to understand that if anything were to happen, it's probably not going to happen unless we were to order it. We're not seeing that the homeowner is independently taking actions to secure her property in such a way that the animal is secure there. Mr. Nelson.
Thank you so much. And if we choose the option of confinement, can we put a timetable on how soon that has to be done, as far as we know from the site visit that the police department will make, that everything's in order? And then obviously if something was to happen from there, then the next choice would be much severe in a direction I think none of us want to go. But what can we do about that, and how soon can we say we need this to be in place?
So if the board were to order the dog to be confined to the premises, the board can define that to mean indoors inside the house, or inside a fenced dog run or pen with a roof and walls. So to the extent that they don't have that latter part in place yet, that order would require them to keep the dog indoors
Indoors at all
until
times.
such time as they were to successfully install a pen or dog run area that satisfied that requirement.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair,
Ms. Frail.
if the dog were to get out again under the conditions of the confinement, would the owner have to come back for another hearing, or could it be an automatic sort of jeopardy?
No, the owner would need to come back for another hearing, and as you can see, there's a lag in getting a hearing together and posting and all of that, and presumably if that were to happen, we would know about it because there was another incident. I don't assume that the owner would let us know if it happened in error. Mr. Nelson.
One more question just about confinement. I just want to understand it clearly. So as far as walking the dog and things like that, the dog is indoors at all times, even like, so walks are not available, like this dog stays indoors, correct? I just want to be sure that that's what we're saying.
That part of the statute does suggest, does indicate that it's either indoors or outdoors in a fenced area. But, but if they don't have the latter part and you order the confinement,
everything happens indoors. Okay, I just wanted to be clear.
I believe that's right.
I would say that if that were the order, that the dog stays indoors until a fence goes up, first of all, she's subject to getting the fence company to come up because now is their busy season since they can't work in the winter. That would be the ultimate, that's death. And I think when a dog, that's why I think we should have a behaviorist speak to this, because a dog with a muzzle on and a leash and walk by itself with one adult on its own property, it should be allowed to be on its own property with a muzzle, a leash, and an adult attached to that leash. No other dogs out at the time, but I mean, the muzzle is the ultimate safeguard. Now, we heard about what's in the best interest of Axel, and for some reason there was a statement that I guess a fenced-in yard isn't in the best interest of the dog, but confining into the house, I haven't seen that, because I think there's a question whether that's even humane or not. So I'm just saying, I think that if that's the order tonight, then we didn't accomplish anything.
Okay.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr. King.
Just a bit of a reality check. Diane, dogs don't behave like this. Good dogs, and most dogs are really good, they don't attack people. There's talk about dog behaviors. There's a teenager and needs to be neutered. But this is not an over-enthusiastic watchdog. This is a dog that's an apex predator hunting in the neighborhood and trying to kill dogs. And so I'm really not sympathetic that we could take measures that would protect the neighborhood. Because what do we say next time? When there's a fourth or fifth incident, what do we say? Oh, we've sort of been sitting on this. I'm sorry about your dog or your child, and we'll now take real measures. So where do we go from here?
Madam Chair, one more question.
Yep.
If we were to choose euthanasia and set a time limit on it, or a boundary, what are the circumstances the dog would be held in until that point?
So we would need to define those circumstances. Right now, we've been given this language of confinement. I think we all agree that actually the language we have in front of us for confinement is pretty inhumane. I think we all agree with that. But I think we would need to define some condition that we would permit, and I don't know if that is what the attorneys suggested. We'd probably want to discuss it. The dog with an adult in the yard muzzled.
Yeah, because it doesn't sound like they're set up for
in the short term.
So we couldn't expect.
Right,
this.
There is no closed-in area with a pen with a roof that meets that criteria. Attorney Heap, my other question relates to insurance. One of the other remedies, pieces of a remedy that this board could require would be that insurance, up to $100,000 a rider be put on file at the police department for individuals who may need access to that insurance because they have been harmed in some way.
That's absolutely right. The board can require the owner to put up a minimum of $100,000 in insurance, insuring them against any further incidents. And also just to add to that, just to be absolutely clear, all of the remedies we're talking about can be imposed in combination. It's not just one or the other. These are things the board can order multiple points that we've talked about tonight. So it can be insurance, confinement, insurance, muzzling when off the premises. Any combination of what we've discussed tonight, the board can order.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Mr. Borelli.
Just to Attorney Cohen's point, and I agree that confining the dog indoors or in a pen is not a good situation. I think what the board would be saying is, because that is not a good situation, it's really time to look for a new place for this animal, which is better than euthanizing the animal. I think it gives the option for the owner to make that decision. If you want to live with this dog inside and you think that's your choice, but clearly that's not practical and that's not great for the dog, but that is an option. And instead, I really think it should be Plan B from this point on. This board is not going to make a recommendation that allows this dog to live as it was living months earlier. It's just not going to happen due to the track record. So I think these are the two choices in front of us. And, and I understand neither are good options, but I think one is much worse than the other. I just had a question for Attorney Heap as far as the record. Do we have to enter our packet into the record, or is that assumed?
I think it is assumed to be part of the record already, but before we close, we might want to just briefly recount what was included in your packet.
Great. I just want to make sure it was complete. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. Any other questions? So I believe what I've heard proposed is that we have previously found Axel to be a dangerous dog, and we find Axel still to be a dangerous dog. That has not changed. And on the basis that he has been a dangerous dog, we would in fact, at this point, move that Axel be humanely euthanized. I think we would also move that Ms. Razul must pay the veterinary bills for her neighbor at this point in time. Until such time as Axel should be euthanized, we would expect that Axel must be confined to the premises, right? And we would permit Axel to be walked outdoors in the backyard on a leash with an adult and a muzzle. Is the one exception to that between now and such time as action is taken. Does that sound like?
Madam Chair, that might be views of other members of the board. I would not support euthanization at this point. I would support the confinement of this animal as a last resort with hopes that a solution is found. But that's my position on this.
And if it's confinement, are you saying confined as it's defined here? Or are you saying confined with the ability to walk in the backyard?
No, confined as it is defined in our motion, with also the insurance policy put in place and in order to neuter the animal.
And in order to neuter the animal?
Correct.
Okay, it's confined, okay. Thoughts? Mr. Nelson?
Yes, thank you. I think just from talking to and hearing from quite a few different people in that neighborhood and the sense of fear that they have, I don't want to suggest euthanization, but I feel like options and chances and things have been given over and over again, and there hasn't been any just due as far as getting the things done in order to make this something that we should not have had another public dog hearing about. So I struggle with giving another opportunity for this to possibly happen again because actions have not been taken thus far after all the incidents we've had. So as much as I don't want to do that, because I understand that this dog, as is said, is a part of the family, but I'm thinking about so many other families and other people that are in the position and that are in that area that are frightened to walk out their door, and not enough has been done. So
I have a question about that, Mr. Nelson. Not enough has been done. Well, this isn't why this happened, but what would have prevented it is if, at the first hearing, after 3 incidents, the board said fence. The board should look and say, is this dog neutered or not? I mean, there's another level of confinement and restraints that you should consider, and those haven't been tried yet. Now, if the dog gets out of the fenced-in area, I mean, then we know that failed. But we have too many tools available to say we give up without using all the tools. And another tool we didn't even mention was still putting the e-collar on the dog, having 2 backup batteries or backup battery. And so you have 3 ways that when this dog is walked on its property, it has a leash, a muzzle, and an e-collar. So if we went through all the tools, fine. But no one here can say that you're getting to the right decision the right way without evaluating the dog and saying, let's use the tools that are in here to see if they'll work. I just think that's why we're asking for another chance. If all these were in place and this dog got out and did that, then we're at a different point. I'm not here, I think, if that happens. So,
Attorney Cohen, I'm
Yes.
somewhat sympathetic to Mr. Nelson's concern. If you watched the film from the first hearing, you would understand that the board asked about a fence at that time, and we were told that the fence was too expensive. At the same time that we were told that Axel did not honor the electronic fence, but we suggested that putting in a regular fence would be valuable. And so what I see at this point that I'm concerned about is a dog owner who is not actually taking any steps to create a situation where her dog will be protected at home and where the neighbors will be protected from the dog. And I am very concerned that we are currently in a situation where unless this board orders it, there will be no action taken and people in the neighborhood will continue to be at risk. So I share Mr. Nelson's concern for the neighborhood that has clearly told us that they are uncomfortable with the situation right now.
Oh, completely understand, and that's why I'm asking for one more chance. I don't even think a fence was higher in her priority until I spoke to her about it yesterday. I mean, part of this is we need better dog owners, and she knows she needs to be a better dog owner tomorrow than she was today.
That's correct.
Can I speak for a second?
You may speak.
So I have been doing what the board has been asking me. I have been trying to do everything. I have changed the door. I have put the muzzles. I have, I have secured them, like with the invisible fence, like with extra training. I took them to extra training with a professional with boarding. That cost me also a fortune. So I have been doing things. It's not like I'm sitting just and watching my dogs just go around. I have been doing things because I am also concerned. I don't want to be put in this situation where my dogs injure other dogs. So please, if you can just acknowledge that I am not ignoring what the board is asking me. And when we talked about the fence, I said that, yes, I'm a single mom. I'm working 10 to 12 hours, and it is expensive. But for this now, I will find a way to put them on, to put the fence, pay the bills, and neuter him, whatever it takes. At that time, I had the invisible fence that was great with Maya, and he was doing great. Until now, he was doing great, even with a leash. When I go outside with him with a muzzle, and I play the ball, and it goes beyond the fence, and he stops there, it's good. I'm human, still, how would I know the battery just goes down? Things happen, yes, that's not a justification. But I'm not sitting there not doing anything.
So we do understand that you have done what the board has put in writing that needed to be done.
Madam Chair?
Mr. Borelli.
Mr. Sewell, we've had hearings like this before, and I think Mr. Keene pretty much stated this is not normal for dog behavior. So in prior hearings that we've had, we had a hearing where the owner agreed to rehome, find a place, and they were successful finding a place for the dog. And I know you're very reluctant to do that, but you're looking at options that clearly are not better than that one. So I just want to ask you, would you consider finding a place, there are services, to rehome this dog before we move further on in this conversation?
Diana, as your attorney, I'm instructing you not to answer that question.
Okay. Thank you, Manager.
Madam Chair.
Okay. Mr. King?
I agree with Matt. His sentiments are right. I mean, this is not a way to raise a dog, to have a dog. And, you know, it's up to the dog owner to make the right choice.
All right. So,
But in Massachusetts, judges are not authorized to look at what's in the best interest of the dog. And you certainly are not being held to the standard of a judge. But when we get there, that's not a reason that she can't have her dog because the fenced-in yard isn't enough. That's just not recognized yet because of the way the law treats animals as property. So I wish we could get off this, which is really a compulsory rehoming speech, and work within what we can do. And there's plenty we can do within the law without trying to stretch the bounds of the law and not telling her to rehome, but trying to compel her to by shoving the dog in the house and saying, well, live with that as long as you can, and then you'll want to kill your dog or rehome it. So the reason rehoming is not in there is the very reason you shouldn't be bringing up rehoming, because it's not legal. So please, as a board, as an elected board, with smart people here, and I'm trying to help you figure this out, and I'm giving you the tools to figure it out. I know the pressures you have, but you also have pressure to recognize that mistakes happen, and she's working towards fixing it. Let's use the tools that we all have available to us instead of going off script, which the statute doesn't allow you to do right now.
Mr. Cohen, I was trying to help your client make a better decision than what's in front of us.
okay. I understand that we have a couple of people in the audience who have hands raised. I actually can't see you. You're behind the chief, so my apologies. If you would like to approach and ask a question.
My name is Susan Breisner. I live at 243 Warren Street, Needham. I have lived in Needham for over, 55 years. I am a single mother, okay? I'm talking to Diana now. I do not have a dog. I love dogs tremendously. I had to work. I had a small son. He's 33 now and works for TNC. I had to make choices. I would love dogs, but sometimes you have to say goodbye, okay? My question is, you know, if you're working along, I understand that, you got kids, you got 2 dogs, what is in the best interest of the whole family in the neighborhood? And I'm not talking law, Mr. Cohen. I think this dog is territorial. He's not beating anybody up when he's not in his own territory, okay? But I'm just been sitting here for 45 minutes, and I think the board has to do what they have to do, and then Diana, you just have to make the choice, okay, of you're not living in a situation which is good to have 2 dogs. You know, if this is a dog, behavioral, whatever, it sounds like it's a dog that needs space, it needs a field. We got Vermont, we got New Hampshire, we got Western Mass. I mean, we got so many beautiful places where the dog would probably be happier. So are you really thinking about the dog, or are you thinking about yourself? Okay, because right now.
Thank you, Ms. Weissner.
Okay, I don't know if that's going to help, but I'm just saying is it seems to me that everybody's bending over backwards. I love dogs, and I don't want them to say euthanasia. So, you know, I'm just trying to speak as a mature woman. Just sometimes we have to make hard decisions, okay?
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
We also have some additional hands that are up on Zoom.
Yes, Madam Chair, the first hand up was Ross Donald.
All right. Please bring Mr. Donald over.
Following Mr. Donald, we have Lauren Roth.
Okay. Maybe Mr. Donald is coming. Oh. Maybe he just put his hand down?
Likely I'll promote Lauren Roth.
Okay.
Hi, everybody.
Hello, Lauren. Thank you.
Yes. My name is Lauren Roth. I live at 41 Bobsled Drive. I happen to have a almost two-year-old dog. And I'm highly sensitive to Diana, and I really appreciate the position that Jeremy's brought up tonight. But I think I'd like to just bring another voice to the conversation, which is kind of the dozens of neighbors that I've had the opportunity to connect with over the last few weeks who are, I'd say, terrified to walk their dog in any close proximity to West Street where the dogs reside. And, you know, I'm fortunate enough that our dog does not have kind of an aggressive bone in her body. But I think that's all the more reason why I'm really nervous to get anywhere close to these animals. And I had the opportunity just this week, a couple days ago, to see Lucy and her owner, who I know had very much wanted to be here. And I just think it's really important for you guys to know that this was not just like a bite, that this dog had such significant injuries that it's almost a miracle that the dog is still alive. And I feel like it's on all of us that we have now kind of traumatized yet another family after several others have already been traumatized. You know, as a dog owner, I take that responsibility very seriously. And even though my dog has no aggressive tendencies, when I introduce her to children, to other animals, I take precautions. And because as much as I love her as a member of my family, she's an animal and you need to be careful. And I just don't have a whole lot of confidence based off of the last few months that there's this equal amount of responsibility coming from this pet owner. And if my dog ever were to even bite another dog, and I can't even imagine like what's going through everyone's mind now. But I just think it's very important to know that this is affecting dozens of other families who are very worried and very concerned about their own safety and their own animal safety. And I just want to make sure, I know that got communicated in at least one email, but I think it's important for you to hear that from other people as well.
Thank you, Ms. Roth. Yes, it did get communicated.
I've seen the video, and it's horrible. But I also don't take every case that comes to me. And I have a heart-to-heart with the client, because I'm not representing somebody a second time. And if I come away from that heart-to-heart thinking they're not really invested in doing this, then I'm not going to represent them. I'm just trying to represent people who will take responsibility. We have to get her. She has to take more responsibility, and what it is more, she has to invest more money, because nothing would make people feel safer than if there's a dig-proof, leap-over-proof fence. But it's horrible to have to walk around there in fear. That's why I think a fence should be given a chance.
Okay. So we had 2 alternate proposals on the table. One was the one that included euthanasia. One was the one that said that we would move to confine the dog with the definition of confinement as listed in our materials, which means confined indoors, or in an enclosed and locked pen or dog run, which currently does not exist, at the 233 West Street address, plus the addition of putting the insurance on file at the police station and neutering the animal. Mr. Borelli, did you make that as a motion?
Sure, I'll make a motion. I'll move that the Select Board vote to find Axel of 233 West Street to be a dangerous dog based on the credible evidence presented during the hearing that Axel has, 1, without justification, attacked a domestic animal causing physical injury, and 2, has behaved in a manner that a reasonable person would believe poses an unjustified imminent threat of physical injury or death to people and domestic animals. And move that the Select Board order pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 140, Section 157, that Axel be confined to the premises of its owner, Ms. Diana Rasulaga of 233 West Street, provided that confined shall mean securely confined indoors or confined outdoors in a securely enclosed and locked pen or dog run area at 233 West Street. Such pen or dog run shall have a secure roof, and if such enclosure has no floor secured to the sides thereof, the sides shall be embedded into the ground for not less than 2 feet. Within the confines of such pen or dog run, a doghouse or proper shelter from the elements shall be provided to protect the dog, and that when removed from said premises, Axel shall be securely and humanely muzzled and restrained with a chain or other tethering device having a minimum tensile strength of 300 pounds and not exceeding 3 feet in length. And to add to that, as you said, Madam Chair, the insurance policy as discussed, as well as neutering the dog. And move further that all orders included in the Select Board's decision dated January 13th, 2022 shall remain in full force and effect, namely A, that the owner of the dog provide proof of additional skill training to rectify the violent tendencies of the dog, and B, that the owner take steps to secure 233 West Street to ensure there are no additional inadvertent releases of the dogs out of the home. That's my motion, Madam Chair.
Does that motion have a second? If it does not have a second, then I would invite an alternate motion.
I will withdraw my motion, Madam Chair.
We have a difficult decision tonight, okay? None of us, I think, I speak for all of us in saying that we do not agree that the dog owner has taken sufficient responsibility up to this point for her dogs, which gives us a lack of confidence in future actions going forward. I understand that that's where we are, all right? But we have an obligation to the neighborhood for what we might do. Mr. Borelli's motion would have provided conditions that the dog was alive, but that we do not believe actually creates a humane situation for the dog going forward. The dog owner would certainly need to take actions in some direction to create an environment for the dog.
Madam Chair, this evening I've heard people say the dog is territorial, the dog has violent tendencies, the dog was hunting prey, the dog has aggressive tendencies. You're all speculating what the behavior of the dog is when the answer is right in front of you. Do the right thing in order that a behavioral evaluation be done. No one here knows anything about dog behavior. You're proving it. Get the right person, get to the right decision the right way, or this thing is going to take forever. Why can't you just do that so we get the right information? Maybe they find that the dog should be put down. Not every behaviorist says And these are people with PhDs, by the way. We're not talking about trainers that are uneducated. These are people in the state who have PhDs. Get to the right answer the right way, and then this can all go away. It's either going to go away because the dog can't be rehabbed, or it's going to go away because she's going to secure the place. But to kill a one-year-old dog for a woman who hasn't turned her back on anybody, she has implemented the things that the town ordered. She's implemented what you told her to do. Implement more and she'll do more. You have no reason to say that she hasn't followed through and been responsible. You just don't. And I just think if you go the route of euthanasia, there's so many problems with this hearing, including the fact that I wasn't allowed more time to put it on an adequate defense. I was given documents yesterday. That's not fair. That gets us in court.
Attorney
That's
Cohen.
not fair that I was given documents yesterday. So I just want you to think about, we have something that we could certainly secure right now for the neighborhood. Let's get it.
Attorney Cohen.
Let's get this fence. But if you kill the
Thank
dog,
you for your
this is going
remarks.
to go on for quite some time.
Can you please tell me how long it would take to secure such an evaluation?
Sure. Thank you. It generally takes 60 days. I will do these people are busy. I will do everything I can to make it sooner. There's a few people that I can go to and ask, or I can suggest to Attorney Heap that he could ask to try to get it in sooner.
Did I understand within 6 days, so within a week?
No, 60. No.
60.
Yeah, so the goal would be to get this done in less than a month. That would be the pressure I would put on the professionals that I know.
All right, just a second. Ms. Frail.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Attorney Cohen, I'm concerned about this idea of a pet psychologist because...
It's not a pet psychologist. It's an animal behaviorist who went to school for 6 or 7 years.
Forgive me, a behaviorist, because you yourself in your opening statement said that the behaviorist is really someone who works with the dog owner. And it concerns me, even my secondhand knowledge of people and their dogs, it is my experience that behaviorists, psychologists, trainers are all actually working with the owner, not the animal.
Well, the great thing about this industry is there's so few of them, and credibility is so important that they regularly say they work with both to say this owner's not getting it or this dog won't get it. This is the real deal. This is their careers. They're not a psychologist trying to calm the dog down. They're using science and medicine and tools in determining if this dog can be changed. So I understand people aren't aware of that industry, but their credibility is everything. And if they may be being paid by the owner, but they don't tell the owner what the owner wants to hear. If they know that this report is coming to the town, and they certainly have, these people have also put dogs down, these behaviors that I'm thinking of, one at MSPCA Angel. If they know they're doing this for everybody here, they can give you an assessment of the dog and if Diana is capable of working with him.
Thank you, Attorney. Mr. Keene?
Chief, what do you or the dog officer recommend?
I do have concerns about the ability of the dog owner to control the dog. As we've seen in the past, we did put regulations in place. And I don't think that obviously they haven't worked. And I do have concerns going forward about the ability for them to make sure that those dogs don't get out and harm any other dogs or, God forbid, people.
Okay. Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Mr. Borelli.
I just want to make kind of two comments. It's been a month since this incident, and something could have been done in that month as far as getting a behaviorist, or at least started down the track of getting behaviorists before this meeting. So I'm not compelled to try to delay it for that reason. I do, again, think that we have arrows in our quiver that we have not used as far as this containment and confinement before euthanasia. And I think maybe during that time you would have the behaviorist if we felt, or they felt that was necessary, because ultimately it's on the dog owner to have, we can order so much, but either the owner doesn't listen or the owner should do more as a safeguard for her own well-being and the being of the neighbors, so that we're not here again if we decide not to euthanize. So I think the onus is really on the owner to come up with more safeguards, and I know Attorney Cohen mentioned some of them. Instead of us ordering it, I think it behooves the owner to do them voluntarily because they don't want to come back before this board. But I just feel that euthanasia at this time, I understand the neighborhood and all the other issues, but if we'd already tried the confinement and everything else that I made in my motion and that did not work, I think we'd be there. But I don't think we're there yet, but I think we're on the 1-yard line. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I would probably be inclined to support Mr. Borelli's motion with an expectation, in fact, that the homeowner would take other actions as a result. It seems to me that if the homeowner had a dog in confinement as defined here, that it would behoove the homeowner to create an environment for the animals that could be a safe confinement, which would mean fencing in the yard appropriately. It might mean that the homeowner would take the evaluation and go forward with that. But I agree, thus far we haven't seen the homeowner taking any of those signs that seem obvious, all right, and doing them despite having had a month to do them since the latest incident, let alone what occurred before.
Madam Chair, this also seems quite expensive. I mean, do we need some kind of assurance that the homeowner can do any of this? I mean, between the insurance policy and then a fence with a roof.
And neutering.
And neutering. And, you know, and if the dog has some issues. I mean, this just sounds like a very expensive undertaking, and I'm concerned that we don't have any confirmation that this can happen feasibly. I think our trust is kind of maybe at its limit.
What you do have is the power of the order, that if she can't comply with the things that you say, then even if the dog doesn't escape, if she hasn't complied with the order, then you have the power of the order and what you can do with that. And there's a lot of power behind if somebody in that situation, you do have a lot of power in that.
So Attorney Cohen, you understand that we could, in fact, as part of our order, compel all of those actions, none of which have previously been undertaken by the homeowner, correct?
And it's really going to be up to her, right? Is she going to make the investment?
So,
or is she going to rehome the dog?
So perhaps we take Mr. Borelli's motion and we add to it the need to install fencing around the perimeter of the property that meets an appropriate standard. And the evaluation, and say all of the above. And neutering. Fencing. We already had neutering before, and the insurance rider being on file.
And is there a remedy if the owner finds that she cannot comply? We reopen a hearing? Does that happen?
If the owner found that she could not comply, what would that mean?
If the owner does not comply with any of the remedies, or any one of the remedies that the board orders, we can go into district court and get an order from a judge enforcing all the parts of your order within a matter of days, I would think.
Madam Chair, Attorney Heap, can we on our own reconvene a hearing and then order euthanasia if this isn't, or do we have to wait for a complaint or an order from the judge to?
There could be a subsequent complaint, even in the absence of another incident. And I think, and I would think that failure to comply with your order would be, enough to trigger another complaint.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Other thoughts? Mr. Nelson?
Just confirming that it wouldn't take another incident. It would take a violation of not executing everything in the order. That would be suffice as far as that would be the complaint and then trigger that. Well, it wouldn't take an outside. I just want to be sure that.
Well, I guess I'm going to walk that last comment back after having thought about it for a second. We can go into court to enforce anything that you order tonight or after this public hearing. In the absence of compliance, I think the board's remedy is to go get that order enforced. I don't know that if you were to order, a secure dog run with a roof to be installed and the dog to be confined to that, that failure to do that would be sufficient to trigger another hearing and another round of remedial action. I think what the board's remedy would be to compel them to do what you told them to do tonight. I'm not sure that answered the question. Did that?
That suggests to me, though, that if we could only compel them to do what we ordered tonight, all right, that we would not trigger another hearing without another incident, which actually gives me pause as well.
Yeah. Also, how do we ensure, all of these remedies take a while to implement, so how do we ensure that things are safe in the interim for the neighborhood?
Attorney Heap, is there a way to put an order in place and continue the hearing? Or can the order only be in place by closing the hearing?
I believe that you can impose an order while the hearing remains open. We might want to turn to Attorney Cohen and see if he would confirm that, because I think what that allows the board to do is impose remedies that may be attractive to the dog owner, and leaving the hearing open may give the board some opportunity to continue this.
Attorney Cohen, what do you think of that possibility?
I think it's good for several reasons. So if I understand it, it would be, instead of closing, a suspension of the hearing, and by whatever date is picked, for the follow-up, she would have had to do X amount of things. And so it's sort of a check-in, and without having to go through the whole process again. I've seen it, and I think the biggest thing is, would we object and go to court and say they kept the hearing open? Well, I'm telling you, we wouldn't.
Okay, and so if we were to consider something like that, I don't know if the board thinks that that has merit. I would actually want to include as part of our list of orders, in fact, that I would expect a weekly update, in fact, from Ms. Rizal about what actions have been accomplished in the prior week, what's been scheduled, what we understand lead time is for certain items, so that we have a sense of progress that can be reported on, and that the neighbors can understand that there is work that is ongoing.
Madam Chair, just because as we're talking about this sounds like this would be a better solution. My other thought, but I think this is better than that, would be almost a contingent. If this is not followed, then the board would order euthanization, and then you could go in probably with that order and say, okay, well, this hasn't been, and here's what the order will be. But if we're able to keep this open, as you said, Madam Chair, with weekly check-ins, probably take a month to get everything constructed, but in the meantime, the dog would be indoors.
The dog would be confined for that period. Yeah.
Correct. I'd be fine with that.
All right, I'm starting to see that we might have some agreement. I'm not 100% sure. So let me go back.
The confinement indoors, maybe could there be a car vote for 2 15-minute intervals a day where he could, he's got to go outside to use the bathroom.
So
there actually is in the motion that I have, that when removed from the premises, muzzled and restrained with a chain.
Okay, thank you. I wasn't sure if that was survived or not.
Does that apply, or did that only apply to Maya? I'm just curious. I want to be sure. Or does the confinement order that Matt read apply to Axel, which does not have that provision, is stricter?
So
Or I can convey our intent, and we may need to straighten out this language. That's the other thing.
It says Axel. Yeah, it says Axel.
So this says Axel is, right, Axel doesn't have the provision for going outside. That would be my understanding.
my understanding of Mr. Borelli's motion was that the dog would be confined to premises as defined in the statute, but that when removed from the premises, they would be muzzled and restrained with a chain or other tethering device having a minimum tensile strength of 300 pounds.
All right, so we may need to modify that to say one dog at a time with an adult holding the leash. Okay?
Yeah.
This is other than the backyard.
Right.
In the ongoing training from January.
Yes.
Can you repeat, Madam Chair, could you repeat? I didn't hear that.
The ongoing training. That the ongoing training that was put in January should remain part of it.
Okay.
All right. What are are there further expectations of this board then, beyond having the insurance on file and the neutering? Are we expecting that an evaluation be undertaken? Are we expecting that a perimeter fence would be constructed at the house?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
All right, so those are both elements of our order. Mr. Nelson?
Yes, just having a tough time with taking the dog out outside of their premises. I can understand the backyard, letting the dog out back there, even muzzled in the backyard in that situation, but around the neighborhood and other places is what I'm having a tough time with.
So I actually agree with that. When I originally read this, my original proposal was that we would let the dog out in the backyard for Axel. Maya does have the ability to go off premises under the arrangement that's defined here. But I would prefer to see Axel remain on the property, given the incidents that have occurred, and that when he is out, even on the property, that he needs to be muzzled, leashed under those constraints. Can we specify that? Yes?
Yeah, okay. I like that.
That's fine.
All right?
Yeah. And then as far as, I know this is about Axel, but as far as Maya and anything else down the road or what may happen or not happen, what our course of action be with that?
So my understanding is that Maya continues to be, to go through the additional training that was specified after the training that was required back in January. So she is still going through subsequent training now. I think as part of the reporting, we would like to hear ongoing reporting about Maya's progress as well. Do we want to include an element that says the hearing is continued for 1 month, subject to weekly reports?
Yes.
Yes, if progress isn't made or things are not being done, then
What appointments have been scheduled,
Right.
et cetera.
So, Madam Chair, just so I can clarify in case I have to make this motion, are we looking to suspend this hearing, or would continue be the proper terminology, and should it accompany an order, Attorney Heath?
Is it continue or suspend? Yeah.
I think you're looking to suspend the hearing for a period of time and to issue an order in the meantime on the basis of the hearing that has occurred thus far.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, why don't I start with the motion, if you don't mind, Madam Chair?
Yep.
Okay, so I'll move that we find as enumerated as number 1 in our agenda fact sheet regarding the dog as a dangerous dog with the text included. And secondly, that we suspend this hearing for 30 days of meeting, we have our calendar here.
May 10th.
May 10th. Suspend this hearing to May 10th with the order that pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 140, Section 157, that Axel be confined to the premises of its owner, Ms. Diana Rasulaka, 233 West Street, provided that confined shall mean securely confined indoors or confined outdoors in a securely enclosed and locked pen or dog run area at 233 West Street. Such pen or dog run shall have a secure roof, and if such enclosure has no floor secured to the sides thereof, the sides shall be embedded into the ground for not less than 2 feet from the confines of such pen or dog run. A dog house or proper shelter from the elements shall be provided to protect the dog. And further, that a fence be erected at the premises to contain the dog. Further, that a weekly check-in with the chief of police, updating on the situation of the animal. Further, that an insurance policy, as discussed, is put in place. Further, that the animal is neutered. And then further, that an evaluation will be, seek an evaluation for the animal. And then when removed from said premises, which shall only be confined to the yard, axle shall be securely and humanely muzzled and restrained with a chain or other tethering device held by someone 18 years or older, having a minimum tensile strength of 300 pounds and not exceeding 3 feet in length, and that all other orders, including the Select Board's decision dated January 13, 2022, shall remain in full force effect. Namely, A, that the owner of the dog provide proof of additional skill training to rectify the violent tendencies of the dog, and B, that the owner take steps to secure 233 West Street to ensure there are no additional inadvertent releases of the dogs out of the home. And Madam Chair, is there any other items that I missed?
The one other item is that we are also expecting that the vet bills for the dog that was injured are paid.
Great. And that
by the dog owner.
Great. I'll add that to my motion as stipulated by the client.
Mr. Burley, may I make one request? On May 10th, that evening, I mean, this sounds, however this comes out, but I'm speaking at the Mass Bar that night. Can we go for the 17th? She'll still give you the weekly updates. Or do you have a meeting on the 17th? You meet every week?
Yeah, I'll change that motion. No? You want to do it?
I missed that. I'm sorry.
I'm unavailable May 10th that evening. I have a speaking engagement. What's the next available? I'm asking if you would have the next hearing on a night other than May 10th.
I'm not willing to postpone it another 2 weeks. Is the board willing to have an additional meeting? I mean, I'm not sure what our alternatives are.
Let me see here. Yeah, it'll be the 17th, right?
The 17th.
Isn't it the courageous?
It is.
I couldn't hear what?
I said I don't think we're moving to another Tuesday. I think it's has to be at some alternate time. Attorney Cohen, are you out all that week?
No, it's just that evening. The Mass Bar Association's been trying to nail down a date, and they finally did and sent it out for me that evening. And most other things I can cancel, but you pick a time, and I pretty much will be open for anything else.
Okay. Why don't we, if we keep May 10th, and if there is some discussion for our next meeting of another date, that's fine, but just so we're not going through our calendars tonight, why don't we keep May 10th on that?
So Attorney Cohen, we will, you can evaluate your calendar to see if there is some time during that evening, earlier or later on May 10th, that might be workable for you.
I can tell you that night, that is, unless it's, I don't know how late you go.
Well, tonight we're going to be going much later than we expected, and so...
Is 9:30 reasonable, or 9 p.m.?
Let's pick a date?
No, let's pick it later.
Pick it later?
Madam Chair, I would recommend we pick May 10th, and we can look at calendars.
All right. Attorney Cohen, we will find a date as close as we can to May 10th. Time is important in this, and there are a lot of people who are greatly concerned about it. So, but we will find a date after tonight. We will pass a resolution with May 10th, but we will agree to work with you on a date.
Thanks so much. Thank you.
Mr. Keene.
Chair, can I just add that other or previous victims of other dogs that have been injured could put in a bills for the vet as well. That should still be open.
There was one other bill for $170 which was paid, to my understanding.
All right, so we can certainly make it clear that that's an offer. It sounds like maybe that has already been accessed. Is there anything else in this motion, or do we need a second? Have we put everything in that we are expecting to be in? So there was a question from Mr. Nelson about whether further violation would in fact lead directly to euthanasia, or would we need another hearing at that point?
I'd have another hearing, Madam Chair, at that point.
We just reconvene this one.
You would want to do?
It would be one, so it would just be the May 10th. If anything
Right, so we have a hearing that's open, so we still have that as an option for us at whatever point we reconvene the hearing.
Okay, absolutely.
Okay, so we preserve that possibility for us.
For the time being, the hearing remains open, so if anything were to happen
in between now and
when
then,
you reconvene,
And
all
have
remedies will
change
be
in
back
order.
on the table.
Correct.
Okay. All right. So with all that, is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? We know this is a really hard topic. That's why we've given it the time that we've given it this evening. It's something that anybody who is a pet owner certainly has sympathy to, but it's also something that we are all greatly sympathetic to the neighbors who are expressing that they're afraid to walk on their streets. So, can't have that in Needham. With no further comments, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Unanimous vote. The order will be in place. Attorney Cohen, we will find a date where you can come back, and we look forward to progress from Ms. Rizal.
Thank you. Thank you so much for tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. My apologies to everybody else on our agenda, particularly to the school department. Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Attorney Heap.
Thanks, Attorney Heap.
I think we'll see you later, right? Are we seeing you later? No? Okay. He says, thank goodness, right? The next item on our agenda, it must be 6:45, is the Emery Grover project update. So I will welcome those to the table. Does anybody want to move the consent agenda?
Yep. So moved.
And I need a second.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It is passed. Thank you. Hello, Mr. Superintendent. I am so sorry that it's been a long time, but we're glad you're here this evening.
Last week at Finance Committee, it was a long discussion about beer. Tonight, it's about dogs. I can't wait for the next school committee meeting. Who knows? Congratulations on your appointment, and same to you, Mr. Nelson, and Mrs. Frail. Congratulations on your election.
I do have to say, as I'm thinking about this, woman number 11, right? And number 1, Vice Chair of Color. So thank you, thank you. There we go.
That's right. That's
New
right.
things.
I will be very efficient. I'm presenting to the Needham Education Foundation at 7 o'clock. So I told them when I'm finished here, I will run over there. Really what I wanted to do is thank you for your continued support of this project and just give you a brief update about where we're at, and people who know a lot more about some of the details can fill in some of the questions here. What I want you to know at this point is that the project, design project moves forward. The hillside design, which is the most immediate need, is almost complete. What you should know about Hillside is that we are really just moving in to what the police have left behind. We're leaving the spaces, the offices, the doors essentially unchanged. We do have to make some life safety updates to fire suppression and some electrical updates. Essentially, though, the building will, we'll just occupy it as it exists, frankly, to save on costs. The EG design is underway. And what I'm excited about is that we will take advantage of the entire building in this design, including the attic, which right now is condemned, has been since 1935. But we will use that top floor as a community and conference center, which we're excited about. And in fact, the entire building is being designed with collaborative workspace, open spaces, and offices, including a welcome center for families who are coming in. Recently, the Community Preservation Committee voted to support $6 million for this project, in a combination of debt and cash, and we very much appreciate their efforts in doing that, which also leaves funding for other important projects for the community. And recently, the Permanent Public Building Committee discussed estimates which, unfortunately, due to the market and the volatile nature of the market, appear to be $2 million over the planned budget. So that's something that we're watching carefully. And in fact, at a recent chairs meeting, including the Select Board, Finance Committee, PPBC, CPC, and School Committee, we concluded that we would wait until final design documents and bidding in the fall to see if anything moves or changes with the market and the costs, hopefully staying the same, maybe even going lower, but certainly not going any higher. And then at that time, if additional funding is necessary, to come forward to the October town meeting and request those funds at that time. All the 5 boards thought that that was a prudent and thoughtful approach to kind of wait until actual bids come in to see if there is indeed a shortfall. And in the meantime, at town meeting this May, we will certainly be open with town meeting about that there is a real possibility that there is a shortage of funds for this project, and that we would need to come back so that they're aware of that, not caught unawares or surprised. And with your support, finally, this project can move forward. We can get Hillside ready beginning this summer, and we would transition presumably to Hillside next December, so that construction and renovation could commence on the Emery Grover edifice and structure, with the possibility, with a short timeline, of moving in sometime in the summer of, I want to say 24. I think I have that right. So with that, Madam Chair, members of the Select Board, we're happy to respond to any questions you might have.
And Dr. Goodekantz, I guess my other question is, at this point, or perhaps this is for Hank, is there anything else you need to proceed with all due haste this summer to gather the appropriate cost estimates and information that are required to move to the next step and be ready for the fall?
Yeah, this is Stuart Chandler, PVC Chair. I think the one challenge we have is with the design documents and going out to bid, we may not be able to get the full cost prior to the October special town, I think with the current calendar that you're planning, the special town meeting. We have discussed within the committee if we can compress the schedule, which means basically having the architects work double duty to put together the documents in order to go out to bid. There is risk in that because it's not just a couple of days or a couple of weeks, it's about a 45-day compression. There is in the PVC committee meeting, the last 2 meetings, which we had the last one on Monday, there is a bit of mixed and concern with that. We're not against it, and we talked to the architects, and we also had that discussion with the architects again on Monday night. They can do that. They can compress the schedule, but you're only going to have a 50% cost piece, and I can let Hank provide a little bit more detail on that. But the challenge is, in anything, and what we've experienced is that when you do compress the schedule, you do run some risks of some slip-ups. All it means is there's a bit more risk, and contingency becomes extremely important in that. We cannot, right now, I think there's questions on contingency size. We will not back down from where our contingency is and what we're advocating, but because you compress and because you put more pressure on getting specific documents done, when we go to bid, we just have to make sure we appreciate what we're faced with, thus the contingency. Do you want to just reference the cost perspective? Document 50%.
Certainly. Also, we did include the full presentation that was with was given to the CPC. For those of you who may not be as familiar with the project, hopefully that brings you up to date. I don't need to go through all of that, but it is a very important historic building. As in any renovation, there will be unknowns that we cannot currently anticipate going into the project, the same way this beautiful building had many unknowns when we entered into the renovation of Town Hall. The contingency that's shown in the spreadsheet that compares the feasibility estimate to the DD estimate, both of which, it's this, well, ours is bigger, but it's this one, does show that $2 million difference that was referenced earlier. I won't get into the weeds on that, but it has, there are numerous factors. I think everybody has been following the inflation issues recently, the labor shortages, supply chain constraints, and most recently, fuel price increases. We had 2 cost estimators working on the project, one for the architect, one for the OPM. We did a reconciliation between those 2, and that's how we came up with these numbers. The schedule, and there are 2 schedules that are in your package. If you're interested in getting into the details, the accelerated schedule would require the architect to be ready to put the documents out to bid by the 1st of September in anticipation of going through filed sub-bids and then general contractor bids for receipt by October 6th, which would lead us to the October 24th special town meeting. I can walk you through that if you can't see it.
I think just quickly, I think it's important on the, if we compress, what is the level of our document cost? 50%, right?
Yeah, so we had, in the original schedule, we had anticipated cost estimates at 2 stages during construction documents, at 50% and at 90%. So by accelerating the schedule, we eliminate the 90% cost estimate. Drawings, the architect is committed to working through the summer. Not an easy task, but and so the difference between the 2 schedules is the 45 days that Stuart Chandler referred to.
Yeah, and I just, if I may, just quickly wrap up. The only thing that the committee would look for is we are not going to accelerate unless we're asked to accelerate from outside the project, given the costs and the risks.
And Madam Chair, it is my hope that the Select Board could ask for, as you vote to support this project with the town meeting warrant, you include in that language you've asked to have the PPBC accelerate the designer's work.
Well, as I understand it, unless you accelerate, we will not have the information that we need at town meeting in October,
Correct.
right? It's
Correct.
a necessary requirement in order to meet the October date.
Correct.
Okay. And I do understand that it comes with a level of risk and less precision, that we're hoping that we have sufficient contingency, et cetera, to cover all the bases. Mr. Haff.
Yes, Madam Chair. The other thing is we would be asking for an emergency preamble to that funding so that we could jump immediately and award the contract on Hillside. The initial filed sub-bids have come in, and the general contractor bids for Hillside renovation are anticipated in another week.
But that's for this.
So that emergency preamble is for the May town meeting.
For the
right now,
May
that
town
will
meeting.
be for the renovations that will happen this summer at Hillside.
Yes, well, as you know, Hillside and Emery Grover are coupled together.
Related, yeah.
And so we would need that mainly to award contract for Hillside.
Okay, and just so, okay. Right, and so everybody here understands the reason for the emergency preamble is so that we can spend funds right away after the town meeting vote. Okay. Are there any, so rather than having you go through the whole presentation tonight, I think that the board has actually done their homework to be prepared on this, and the important new news is the changes that will be required to be ready for town meeting in the fall, with the decision to wait until we have some better precision than we have today on the number that we're expecting in the fall. We do understand changes could go up or down by the fall. The world is a volatile place right now, but it is certainly generally trending in the up direction, and that's likely what we'll see. Are there any questions? Marcus.
Thank you so much for being here. I just had a question as far as the risk factor, and have we done this before, and then what's your level of concern with the risk and precision being, you know, what it is and how you feel about it from your experience, just so we understand and people watching what that really means and, you know, what could or couldn't happen with that.
Yeah, we have accelerated. I don't think we've done an acceleration at 45 days, but we have done it. We've got good architects on it. I think we have a good group of people and all involved, anywhere from the user group, the school committee, to the PVC, to the architects, and people in this town. So I think we can mitigate a lot of risk, but like in any process, you've got a lot of detailed documents, and it's going to behoove the architect and real discipline to make sure that everything's captured. Projects always run the risk of missing a couple of things within the design to the bid, and that's why we have a contingency, quite frankly. Besides a contingency for unforeseen circumstances, it's also for any kind of errors along the way. Nothing's ever perfect. But I think when you compress like this, you do run the risk, especially the older building, of just some pieces. We're just going to have to be disciplined for it. But I think as we get closer, we can expose more of what that risk could be from a design document perspective. But I think we can do it. I think the committee feels that if the select board would like us to do that and the school committee would like us to do that, we'll tackle it the best we can. But we're not going to go in there blind.
Okay. And I would just say, from years of having worked with the PVC, if they felt like they could not deliver this, they would let us know.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And we just want everybody to be aware. I mean, I think that it is a complex project and situation, and we understand all the various factors involved, finance, sequencing, and everything else, but it's important we try and get these prices out. I think with this environment, the sooner, I think everybody does agree, the sooner we get stuff done, the more we can lock in. We don't want to delay. And there's been some good recommendations from everybody involved, school committee, CPC, FinCom, PVC, so.
Yeah.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Mr. Borelli.
Yeah, I think it's a good plan. You know, and we're, like you said, we're going to make it clear at town meeting it's no fault of ours. It's the market and the anticipation that we're going to come back to them. So, you know, it doesn't look like mistakes were made. It's not, no mistakes are being made. Just to sharpen that number, I know it's a lot more work for you. I guess just my question as far as additional costs to accelerate this project with the architect working extra, is there a number that we have on that? Is it nominal, or do you think it's going to be something?
We don't have a number. I don't think it will be big. I'm just putting, you know, an ask, meaning in terms of we have a budget we can work with. They still have to do the work. Yeah. The question is whether they have to double up on the work and bring more people into the puzzle that they didn't expect. And I would suggest what we do is we'll go back to the architect right away and see if there's any change. We haven't gotten any early indication. I'm looking to you, Hank, just to confirm what I'm saying, as a major cost increase. But now that if that's what you want to do, we'll go back and see if there's anything that would require a change request, let's call it simply. But the anticipation is not very much, if anything.
Okay.
Is that fair, Hank, if I may?
Yes, and we do have some funding from prior funding that is in a contingency for that, so we feel we can cover any of those expenses.
Okay. And I would just add, you know, it's nice when you have a collaborative effort like this with the PPBC and the Finance Committee, School Committee, this board, and for coming to us with this. And I think this is the best course of action. So completely support the accelerated schedule and moving this project forward. So thank you.
Other questions, comments?
If I may, Madam Chair.
Absolutely, Dr. Barr.
I just want to emphasize again the collaboration that's really continuing to move this project forward. My simplistic thought is that if we don't accelerate, we delay a lot, costs could go up or down, but I fear that they may go up in the current market. But really what I think we've been so pleased with is that we've been able to, with the help, as just been said by Mr. Borelli, that we can keep this moving forward directly with careful collaboration. The second thing is, I just want to reiterate, I think it's be really important to tell town meeting that, in fact, this cost overage may need to be addressed in the future. They need to know, they need to be prepared, they need to understand why. As someone just said, no one's mistake, just the way the market is. And if we are clear about that now, we have a better chance of moving it forward. Again, just thank you for all of the collaboration amongst all the various committees and boards, including the Finance Committee, who are not here tonight. This is my last hurrah. Glad to see this, that we're doing this.
All right. If there are no further questions, then I will thank you, and you can go to NEF, who I'm sure is looking forward to seeing you. We'll be taking the matter up as we vote items later this evening, but the consensus that I'm hearing is that the board is in support and that we will urge your acceleration of the process.
All right, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. The next item on our agenda this evening is Mr. Siegenthaler, who's here on a citizen's petition to present that petition to us and answer any questions that we might have. Mr. Siegenthaler, I also thank you for your patience this evening.
No problem.
Dogs are always, you know?
This will be less depressing than the dog issue and far less complex than the Emery Grover issue, so hopefully.
All that is good.
Did you want to wait for Mr. Nelson, or should we just jump in?
I think if we could jump in, let's continue to carry forward. I'm hoping he will be right back.
Okay. Well, thank you for having me here, and I appreciate it. The impetus for this petition comes from a dog, as I got a dog a year ago and started walking the streets of Needham and putting 7 or 8 miles a day into all different neighborhoods, which has been really fun and interesting. But in general, from the pandemic, but certainly what I noticed was that the streets of Needham are heavily littered these days, and I thought about what we could do about that. And one of the things I noticed was the proliferation of printed materials being delivered to households. But the fact is, and this is not only about the Needham Times, but the Needham Times is the most egregious example. The fact is they don't get delivered to the homeowner's property. They get delivered to the sidewalks in front of the home, the bottom of the driveway. I have a picture on my phone of one delivery to the end of a cul-de-sac where the 3 or 4 houses, 3 or 4 papers were dropped in the middle of the street at the end of the cul-de-sac. So what happens then is that the papers sit there, they get wet, they turn to mush. If you pass 2 or 3 days later, you'll see the pulp there. You won't see the plastic bag, which is interesting because that means the plastic bag has disintegrated, doesn't decompose, right? It disintegrates and runs into our storm drain, which runs into the Charles River, which runs into the natural waterways. So this is not just a quality of life and appearance of Needham. This is a water pollution and a pollution issue as well. In working with town council, I had originally proposed that we would mandate an opt-in so that you only got delivery of materials if you opted in, and you had to do that every year. But I was advised that that violates earlier case law. It actually goes back decades from what I'm told in terms of the First Amendment and freedom of speech. So we can't restrict the delivery of these things, but we can moderate them and make sure that they're delivered to a place where a homeowner pretty much has to deal with them. I'm not in favor of making somebody deal with something that they didn't ask for, but if we can't restrict it, then let's make sure they get onto the property where the homeowner can take care of it. Now, when it's dropped on the sidewalk at the bottom of the driveway, people pull out of their garage 30 feet up and they drive off to work and they come back and they drive in and they may never see it. Somebody else does their lawn for them. It never gets picked up. It ends up in the gutter or just disintegrating. So the proposal that is now in front of you, my citizen petition, is to add a bylaw that simply says deliveries need to be firmly onto the property. 15 feet I thought was a reasonable number. If there's not 15 feet, then it needs to be at least within 5 feet of the house. And that will essentially force homeowners to deal with these newspapers, whether they want them or not. Now, I understand the Needham Times has announced that they will no longer be in print, but in the same article I read that in the Globe, they talked about various towns where nonprofits are popping up to create local news. And I am all for local news. I'm a consumer of local news. And I get my Globe delivered every day. The Globe doesn't always make it onto the property either. Between Christmas and New Year's, for those of you who were in town, Verizon decided to deliver phone books. I didn't see a single one that made it off of the sidewalk. They were all on the sidewalk. And 30% of Needham, I think, was gone that week. We had storms and rain, and I've seen some of those still sitting out there. What is this, 4 months later? A contractor in my neighborhood dropped business cards on the sidewalk in front of every house the day before we were supposed to get the 2 feet of snow. It's just, we need some way to be able to go back to them and say, this isn't right, you're not allowed to do this. And so that's the impetus of this petition.
Mr. Siegenthaler, what do you believe would be the enforcement mechanism? I understand that you proposed a fine, but in practical terms, how would that occur?
Well, I would think it would occur much like any other nuisance ordinance, which is that it would start with a complaint from one of the homeowners or from a citizen, and at some point, I guess the police enforce these things, right? I was told by town council that there is a state mechanism for enforcing litter regulations. I would think this is probably pretty much the same thing. Everybody who throws their trash out their car window doesn't get caught, but somebody does, or if they do, they're going to get a fine from the police department.
All right.
I'm not an expert on municipal enforcement.
Are there questions from board members? And you're right, the Needham Times has announced that they are ceasing print publication, and the other local news that are popping up in other places are electronic, not print mechanisms.
Today they are.
So, right. Mr. Keene, Kevin.
Thanks for doing this. Is kind of interesting, but I can feel the amendments flying onto it at a town meeting. You talked about enclosed boxes, which would be a mailbox, but you cannot put non-U.S. mail into a mailbox.
I agree.
So I think someone's going to want to strike that out. You also a designated box, but are there such things as a non-mailbox mailbox?
Sure. I remember when I was a kid, right next to our mailbox, we had a Boston Globe delivery box, and the Globe would go in that box. Yeah. So if somebody wants to put that, I'm not suggesting they need to, but if a homeowner wanted to, they could put that up on the street, and that would be legal because they're taking responsibility for this delivery, and it's not in the gutter, right? That's the whole point, is to keep it neat and clean and make sure that it's controlled, basically. It doesn't require that box.
Yeah.
Right?
Gotcha. Okay.
Are there other questions?
Yeah, Madam Chair.
Matt?
I love the intent of this, but you know what the next word is, but. I love the intent of this. As someone who gets the Sunday Boston Globe, which I hardly read, and sometimes it is misplaced. But two things, Madam Chair mentioned, Mary, enforcement I think is going to be difficult for us to go and try to enforce, and the calls we're going to get. We have trouble even, cleaning up the fields and getting enforcement for that. We're talking about a park ranger. I also think if you get behind someone who used to do the Times and be fascinated by how fast they go, I would understand something if it just said not in the public way. But 15 feet, they're into some type of, rhythm. They try their best to get it in the yard or on the driveway. But I think 15 feet is a lot to ask. And I'll say thirdly, yes, you can put up a box, but it's like the U.S. Postal Service. They're only going to deliver how they're going to deliver. So, they're going to, if you put up a box, they're not going to just stop on one and do it, and the next throw it. So I think you need some consistency here. I think if there was a way to say not in the public way, as you said, in the cul-de-sac or in the sidewalk, I would get that. I think on someone else's property, I think it would be difficult to enforce, and I think it would be, I would not support on someone's property. But I think it needs some consideration. We did the same to talk about trash, in barrels, and kind of brought it back and looking to that. I think you're raising the question. I think we can probably refine it to be a little different and then think harder about how we'd enforce it.
It's almost an interesting question, your question about the Boston Globe mailbox that used to be next to your mailbox. Yet for so many of our streets, the mailboxes are actually on the house, right? Mm-hmm. The idea of putting a mailbox for the newspaper out at the street would create a completely different visual from the tree-lined streets that we have today. I mean, so that's another thing I'd just sit there and say, is that a different kind of a challenge? But who knows?
Well, I don't think it's worse than having paper pulp on the sidewalks. I mean, I understand the sensitivity of the delivery drivers, but let's not kid ourselves here. The Needham Times has done this for years. They're not about the community. They are about delivering to every house so that they can raise their subscription numbers.
But they're over. I hear you.
But the next one is going to come in. Or what are you going to do about Verizon and their phone books? What are you going to do about the contractor who leaves business cards on the sidewalk? You're right, enforcement is difficult, but we still have these rules so that maybe the first time it doesn't get enforced, but you take note, and the second time it does get enforced, or the third time it gets enforced, or just the fact that it could get enforced multiplied times all the houses that they deliver to is a substantial disincentive to them. And, hey, so you can't drive 15 miles an hour and deliver the paper anymore. I'm sorry, I don't care, because it's our waterways that are getting fouled because you're too lazy to stop at each house and throw it onto the yard. I'm sorry, pay the drivers a little more, give them a few more hours, and that's the way capitalism works. Pay the money or don't participate. I'm not feeling sorry at all for somebody who wants to throw things all over our yards.
Any other questions? Okay. Anything else you would like to tell us? So I think you've also received directions for how to create a video about your article.
I have not.
All right, so we'll get you those directions so that you can create a video about your article for town meeting members and convey what you would like them to know.
Yep.
We'll be going through afterwards to go through positions and talk about that, and we'll see where the board comes out.
Okay. Thank you for the audience.
Thank you.
Thanks, Paul.
Okay, the next item we have this evening is the Hutter Ridge Road street acceptance. Tom Ryder, our town engineer.
Madam Chair, could I provide a brief introduction?
Can you do that? Yes, I was just going to say, this is Tom's first time here in this role, so.
Please have a seat, Tom. So Tom, as you just mentioned, is our new town engineer. He's been our assistant town engineer since 2007, so he's very familiar with the role. Graduate of UMass Lowell for his bachelor's and master's. Tom's worked both in the public and the private sector. He actually worked for the towns of Hopkinton and Grafton before he came to Needham in 2007. I would note that when Tom is not at work or looking at plans, he's either on the ice, playing hockey, coaching hockey, watching hockey, or maybe watching hockey on TV. Yeah. Any step up for this kind of promotion, we're so grateful that people put their name in and that they're willing to step up. But it's a real deep end with the untimely death of our longtime 29-year town engineer who Tom worked with for so many years. And again, during the medical leave of our Director of Public Works. So Tom really has not only stepped up, I believe you took the job the day the baby was born, or maybe the day before. So Tom's really out there holding up his end of the Department of Public Works at PSEB for us. So, Madam Chair, he's here for his first official act before the board on Hutter Ridge Road.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Welcome. We're glad that you're here, and I know that I'm hearing early reports from people who are thrilled to have you in your role and are grateful for your assistance.
All right. Well, I enjoy working with them too, so we have a lot of great people that I work with, and I've known many of you. I've first been introduced to Heidi and Marcus and you, Marianne. I've seen you around, and I've met Kevin and Matt, of course. So appreciate this opportunity. So I'm here to talk about the street acceptance for Hutter Ridge Road. So Hutter Ridge Road is a constructed road. It's right off of Webster Street at the corner of South. It's about 650 feet, give or take a few. And this first form, actually it's Form 2 and 2A, is just the Select Board's intention of laying out the road, which we will hold at a future meeting, which we have scheduled for the 26th. So Form 2 and 2A, one form the clerk just signs, and the other form the whole board signs. And we post Form 2 with the town clerk and in the surrounding area of Hutter Ridge Road. And we notify the actual residents along Hutter Ridge Road regarding the hearing. At which I will bring a Mylar and a special pen, and based upon more than 50% of the residents giving the blessing and the Select Board agreeing, we have the signatures on the Mylar, which we bring to the town clerk, and she will hold it till after town meeting. And I will be back on the 26th for the signature, and also for Form 3, which will be about a month after town meeting, where we will have everything signed and recorded for the Registry of Deeds. So I think that's about it. I did put a little 8.5 by 11 of just pretty much what the road looks like right now, but I haven't printed out the Mylar, but I'll be ready for the next meeting.
And Hutter Ridge Road, this construction has been completed since when? I'm sitting here thinking it probably started a while ago, and I've just lost it in the phase of time.
Yes, it started around 2013, and the final house construction was around 2021. So all the houses have been constructed, all the drainage is in place, the roadway is constructed, all the landscaping is completed as well.
Grant of licensing. Gone.
Excuse me?
Grant of licensing, they're done.
Grants, I don't.
All of that's done. And the Hutters who lived here before were a longtime Needham family, so you probably know their kids or something, Kevin. I'm sure that's true. Good. Are there any questions?
No.
I would welcome a motion.
Madam Chair, I move that the board vote to approve and sign Form 2 and Form 2A, indicating our intention to lay out Hutter Ridge Road and schedule a hearing for April 26, 2022 at the regularly scheduled Select Board meeting.
And a second?
Second.
Any further discussions or questions for Tom?
Madam Chair, in my brief time that I have to speak, I do want to welcome you again. And it's interesting, the night that we had a moment of silence for Bob McEwen, and he started as an assistant engineer, and of course here you are, and the DPW, and town engineer, I think is just so fitting. So welcome, formally, and terrific presentation. Look forward to more of them, even though you might not, but we look forward to more of them. Thank you.
Thank you. Yep, looking for dull and boring.
Exactly. As Mary Ann said, yeah.
Exactly. Dull and boring are us. Okay. No further questions. A motion moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It is unanimous. Thank you for coming.
Have a great night.
Thank you.
Our next order of business is the town manager, which means we're ready for another big slug of things to go through, right?
Yes. So the first item, Madam Chair, is our recommendation that the board approve and sign the memo of agreement between the town and the Needham Police Union for both fiscal year '22, which is the current year, and then the successor contract for FY '23 through '25, a 3-year contract. I'm pleased to report, Madam Chair, that this agreement meets the key Select Board and community goal of removing the police department from civil service. The police union has at least agreed to support that removal. We have several processes to go on that front, which we'll talk about under the subtext of the warrant, but the police union is a willing partner with us on that in agreement with this memorandum of agreement. It also achieves a couple of other items that we have been working through for a long time, and one of them is internal equity with respect to education pay, and that there were 2 different types of education pay, and both from an internal equity point of view where staff were being paid different amounts for the same work, and also as a recruitment and retention matter, in that we were losing people who were going to other departments. There's a great shortage of employees everywhere, and this is particularly true in the police in police work right now. So we wanted to make sure that our pay was consistent with other communities, or a little higher at this point. And then also recognizing the requirements that are placed on police officers under the Police Reform Act and certification. So we know that this contract is, from a cost perspective, higher than our typical sustainability ratio of between 4 and 4.5%. We expect that the next contract after this would be more in line with that, but this was a convergence of several goals. As I said, particularly the desire to widen the pool of applicants and who can apply to be police officers. We could do much more recruitment in different circles and in other places, and so we recommend this to the board, both from, we think it's a fair contract for the police union, but also fair for the town and meeting the board's articulated objectives.
So I want to say thank you to Kate, to our town manager, and to the chief, who have actually worked hard in this discussion with the union. The goal of having the police leave the civil service system so that we can put in place a system that permits broader hiring from a broader pool for the town is something that we think is key to accomplishing our goals for the force and for the kind of force that we'd like to have in Needham. So I do understand that it is a more expensive contract than we would typically negotiate. We did expect that with both civil service and then the pay equity issue coming in on this one, both of those were items that we knew would have a cost associated with them. But it's good to make both of those happen, and I would look forward to that in the future. I'm glad we reached those goals. Other comments or questions related to this from board members?
No.
Marcus?
Yes. And I know that I talked to Kate and I sent a few questions within this peer review that just waiting to get some answers back from. So just wanted to let you guys know that when we come to the vote, just why I'm right now voting no, just until I hear back from answers about those things that I had. And there's a few questions that I had about certain things.
Just to clarify, most of the questions that we talked about were related to the policy for recruitment of police officers at entry level, which is a policy that we have in draft form that will go to the personnel board that has plenty of opportunity for more comment. So that is not part of the contract. The only part of the contract is the promotional language that we had talked about. But I will get you the answers.
Okay.
So does that mean that the questions that Marcus had related to this contract are actually resolved, and his questions that are still open actually relate to the next layer of documents that are not contract that goes to town meeting?
I would say it's fair to say most of the questions related to initial recruitment. There were a few questions related to promotion that are included in this document.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. So.
Okay.
Yep.
So does that help you understand where we are right now?
Yeah, I understand where we are, but still just going to wait and we'll have a conversation but for the most part,
Okay, because we will not have answers even by town meeting to the issues as it relates to recruitment, because that is actually a to-be-negotiated document still in the future. that the board will have a chance to see. It'll be discussed by the police, it'll be discussed by the personnel board. It has a whole process to create it that we will be able to weigh in on.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Madam Chair, I move that the board approve and sign the memorandum of agreement between the town and the Needham Police Union for FY22 and FY23 through 25.
And a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
I just, Madam Chair, I just a little confused, because I know in executive session we're unanimous on this. Is there something in particular that's outstanding that I'm unaware of, as far as a question that we could answer this evening?
I don't have the questions with me.
Okay. Okay. Are there particular questions, or is it?
I don't think we'll be able to answer them this evening. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Abstentions? So 410 is the vote on this contract. And the next item is the annual and special town meeting articles.
So, Madam Chair, the tradition of the board is to walk through each article, determine whether you want to take a position on that article tonight or whether you need additional information or if I can provide any. And then we will include those recommendations. There may be more that you need to take in at your next meeting in April, although that meeting is after the deadline for filing the recordings of the presentations. So I'm hoping that would be a small number, but there certainly may be some. So the first one would be establishing the elected official salaries, Article 3. The Personnel Board took this up earlier this week and recommended adoption.
Any questions, comments?
I move that the board vote to support Article 3 as printed in the warrant.
A second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0. We'll adopt.
Property Tax Assistance Program, again, at the sum of $50,000, recognizing the importance of trying to assist residents in need to pay their property taxes.
These are the yellow envelopes that are in everybody's bills that come.
Pay. Yeah.
Any questions or discussion? I'd welcome a motion.
I move that the board vote to support Article 4 in the annual town meeting warrant.
I second that.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? 5-0, adopt.
Article 5, the annual Public Facilities Maintenance Program.
Move that the board vote to support Article 5 in the annual town meeting warrant as printed.
I second that.
Any questions or discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? 5-0 to adopt. I just want to stop for a moment. For members of the public who might be watching us do this, this is the culmination of a year's worth of work on behalf of the board, where we've been working through these items and leading up to town meeting. So for us at this point, we recognize Heidi's new. She's also been trying to keep up with us a little bit. Some of this is new for her, and she may have some questions along the way, but it's largely the culmination of work, so we're not spending a lot of time discussing them here this evening.
Right, that's a really good point. Many of these items relate back to goals that the board set at its goal setting last summer. Anything that required funding was included in either the capital plan, which you reviewed 3 times in the fall, and the operating budget, which you reviewed in January. So yes, we've had lots of conversation and lots of pages of documentation on these.
And I would like to say that the town manager has been very generous with her time in going through this with me so that I would be prepared for this meeting. So, good.
Terrific.
Love that. Thank
Thanks.
you, Kate.
With that, we will turn to Article 6.
This Article 6 is for a new round of the small repair grant program as requested by the Affordable Housing Trust.
I move that the board vote to support Article 6.
Second.
Any further questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? 5-0 adopt.
Under Article 7, we're asking that the board recommend adoption of the RTS service delivery study, and this is the study that will look at, among other things, whether the town should remain a drop-off community, whether there's an appetite for curbside, whether, if there's curbside, what operations and facilities need to remain at the RTS site. If we stay a drop-off, what are the investments that we're going to need to make, and what are the cost-benefit analysis of all of that?
I move that the board adopt Article 7 as written.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? 5-0 to adopt.
Under Article 8, another Select Board goal, this would be a parking study of Needham Center and Needham Heights. The questions that we have really started as a relationship to the reset of the downtown design study, but really are questions about if we did remove parking from, for instance, Great Plain Avenue and Highland Avenue in the center and Highland Avenue in the Heights, whether for more pedestrian amenities and or dining, what would be the impact on the retail stores, whether we should have meters, whether we should have more meters, fewer meters, whether we should have cashless meters, whether there should be alternatives to those meters, and whether there are public-private partnerships that we can take a look at in the center and in the Heights, and really some guidance on the future of work and what parking for employees and commuters in Needham is going to need to be over the next 20 years before we make more investments in our infrastructure.
Any questions, or would someone like to make a motion?
I move that the board vote to support Article 8.
Second.
Questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? 5-0 to adopt.
Under Article 9, we're seeking funding for payment of an unpaid bill of a prior year. This was actually our weights and measures service, which the bill was received after July 1, so it requires town meeting approval to be paid.
I move that the board vote to support Article 9.
I second that.
Questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? 5-0 to adopt.
Article 10 is the 2023 operating budget as proposed by the Finance Committee, and as you know, we have worked with the Finance Committee since the town manager's budget and the board's review of that budget in January, and I do recommend their proposal to you.
Okay. I move that the board vote to support Article 10.
Second.
Questions? All in favor? Aye.
That'll be on the consent calendar then, right?
That'll be on consent, we hope. Opposed? Abstentions? 5-0 to adopt.
Be surprised.
Madam Chair, Articles 11 and 12 are the sewer and water budgets that we had proposed to you in the earlier part of the year.
Any motion on Article 11 first?
Move we support Article 11.
Second?
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? 5-0. Adopt. And Article 12.
Move we support Article 12.
Second. Discussion? All in favor? Aye. Abstentions? Oh, opposed? We could do that too. 5-0 to adopt.
Okay. Under Article 13, the state requires that town meeting approve our expenditure of Chapter 90 funds for public ways. We had been reserving our Chapter 90 funds it's about in the $4 million range right now for the next phase of the downtown infrastructure project. We also are contemplating using it for upgrading the grade crossing as part of that project. We will be having a workshop in May to start a conversation with stakeholders who were involved in the downtown project, which the board will host, to really start the reset. And then I would imagine the board would have a public engagement process about that Really, I think we should be having a conversation at that time, and committed to the Finance Committee that we would include them, obviously, in this as to, is Chapter 90 the best way to be funding that, or are there different ways that we should be doing it? So that has been our approach. There may be other approaches that are more holistic. There may be other grants that are out there, or it may be that this really is the best way to do it. So, but nonetheless, we can't spend the money ever unless we have town meeting authorization.
And just again for everybody, when we talk about a reset for the downtown project, we talk about that because when the downtown project was designed, some 5 years ago, I think at least
10.
at this point, 10, it was designed to maximize car throughput through the center of town. Having come through the pandemic, we're no longer worried, we may still be worried in some way about maximizing car input through, but we're actually much more worried about pedestrians and bikes and those who are out and about in town. So we're trying to figure out what the new balance should be as we think about that design to reset. So is there a motion for Article 13? So moved. And a second?
A second.
Discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? 5-0. Adopt.
Article 14 is the annual approval of the revolving funds required under state law.
Okay. I move the board vote to support Article 14.
A second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? 5-0 to adopt.
Under Article 15, this is the annual appropriation to the Community Preservation Fund and assumes that it has been presented by the CPC, and we had our conversation with CPC Chair and Liaison and other members in early March.
Right, not so long ago. Is there a motion?
Yes, I move the board vote to support Article 15.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? 5-0. Adopt.
I note, Madam Chair, that this appropriation for the Community Preservation Fund does achieve the objective that the Chair, Pingatore, talked about, which was increasing the allotment to the Housing Reserve on an annual basis. And similarly, under the Community Preservation Fund supplement, this is to make sure that all of our funds, because we got additional funding in the prior year, make sure that those accounts are all at the state minimum that's required for the CPC fund supplement, and again, additional funding, higher amount of funding for housing.
I move that we support Article 16.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0. Adopt.
Under Article 17, the CPC requests funding for Housing Authority pre-development costs for Linden Chambers in the amount of $1.386 million.
Okay. I move the board vote to support Article 17.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0 to adopt.
Under Article 18, appropriate for Needham Housing Authority property survey, I note that the committee worked with Town Council to limit the scope of this article to the High Rock Estates site.
Okay. Sorry. I move the board vote to support Article 18.
Second.
Questions? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? 5-0 to adopt.
The CPC also recommends appropriation for community farm growing beds in the amount of $200,000.
I move the board vote to support Article 19.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? 5-0 to adopt.
Under Article 20, CPC recommends appropriation for high school tennis courts design. There are a number of ways that the tennis courts can be constructed, so we don't have there's sort of a wide range right now about how, what the cost might be for construction, but we will have conversations about how and under what funding that the tennis courts would be recommended for construction in prior years, in future years, but this is for the design costs.
Okay. I move the board vote to support Article 20.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? 5-0 to adopt.
Under Article 21, appropriate for Emery Grover renovation. As you heard the team earlier, the proposal is to move forward with the $19.4 million amount at this time and consider any amendment that needs to be made in the fall.
I move that we support Article 21 with the emergency preamble.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Yes.
Thank you so much. I would say after talking to all parties that were here earlier today, the somewhat uncertainty of how much more we're going to need, when we're going to need it, and going forward, I'm just not sure if it's going to continue to go up. I would love it to go down. So that being said, just for the uncertainty purposes, I'm going to vote no on this, but I would like to see where we end up in the fall, what happens, and where we go from there.
Any other comments?
I might note that the Finance Committee hasn't taken a position on this, and there is conversation, I believe, on the Finance Committee level about the funding sources that we've proposed, and so we may have further conversation with the board. This is our recommendation now, but there may be a reason we may be persuaded to make a recommendation to the board, so that could come at your April 26th meeting.
Okay.
Which meeting?
April 26th?
Anything
April
else?
26th is your next meeting.
Got it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
So it's 4-1, move to adopt.
Under Article 22 are for the necessary heating repairs and upgrades at the Hillside School in order to keep the heating system operational for the foreseeable use.
Move we adopt.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? 5-0 to adopt.
Under Article 23, Madam Chair, the General Fund Cash Capital, as we mentioned, the board had discussed, I had included an item that I pulled out at the last minute, so you'll note that the appropriation number and the total don't match. The total in the gray, 3.116314, is the total. So we will be working with the moderator as to whether we need to amend that or it can go in the motion, but sorry about that.
Okay.
With that caveat, is there a motion?
I move the board vote to support Article 23.
Second.
Oh.
All right, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? 5-0 to adopt.
Under Article 24, we're seeking funding to retrofit the Pollard School locker rooms.
I move the board vote to support Article 24.
I second.
Any discussion?
I would just note, Madam Chair, that I know people will say we're going to take down the Pollard or we're going to renovate the Pollard. We know that those timelines are long and the locker rooms cannot support the size and equipment of the children who are in there, and the schools feel very strongly that this should go forward.
May I also note that at the Finance Committee meeting last week, Dr. Goodekans noted that there's reason to not include the locker rooms as part of the renovation at that, like when you do the school. And so actually this is probably in a part of the building that wouldn't be touched and therefore would still be in use even after the renovation.
Even better.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Even better. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? 5-0 to adopt.
Under Article 25, appropriate for Public Works Infrastructure. Just a context, Madam Chair, that we are recommending this to be funded with free cash. For years and years, we were borrowing for our roads, and we set forth a plan to wean off that and to use cash, and I think we're very proud of that. And very proud of the amount of money that we're able to allocate for these resources which the public really relies on.
Great. I move that we adopt Article 25 as written.
Second.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? 5-0 to adopt.
Under Article 26, we're seeking funding for library space utilization study. This is predominantly under our, had begun under our prior director and under new directors, trying to envision a way that we can have a better space for our teens in the library, because we very much want them there, and the room that we have now is very small. And so really finding a way that we can encourage teens to go there and to work together and collaborate there in a modern space. So we really do recommend this approval.
Is there a motion? Move that the board adopt Article 26.
Second.
Terrific. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? 5-0 to adopt.
Under Article 27, another goal of the board to take a refresh on the study that we had done on the DBW complex to see whether there are any new approaches or phased approaches that can work in order not to put an entire public works facility at the 470 Dedham Avenue location.
Move that we support Article 27.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? 5-0 to adopt.
Under Article 28, Sewer Enterprise Fund Cash Capital, both fleet replacement and beginning the sewer main project at Greendale Avenue 128.
Move we support Article 28.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? 5-0 to adopt.
Article 29 would have town meeting rescind debt authorizations for the Rosemary Complex and the Memorial Park Building.
A motion?
I move the board votes to support Article 29.
Second.
And with any luck, this one might make it to consent. We'll see. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0 to adopt.
So under the town reserves, most of these are articles that we include on an annual basis. Compensated absences allows us to set aside funds for sick and vacation leave payments for employees who are entitled to them.
Okay. I move the board vote to support Article 30.
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0 to adopt.
Under appropriating for the Athletic Facility Improvement Fund, we have a tradition of funding based on an average of field receipts that are received by the Park and Rec Commission. And in prior years, when we've had an extraordinary free cash, we've on occasion put more in. This, if you recall, we were able to resurface the synthetic turf that we had in town because we had built up this fund, and we expect in another 10 to 12 years we'll need to do the same, and we have the fund to build it up. So.
I move that we adopt Article 31 as is.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? 5-0 to adopt.
Article 32 is the appropriation to ensure that there's enough funding in our workers' compensation fund to meet our obligations.
Move that we adopt.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0 to adopt.
You may recall that at the last year's town meeting, we created the Public Safety Injury on Duty Fund, and this would be the first appropriation into that fund, similar to the Workers' Compensation Fund, because public safety employees do not receive workers' comp, they receive a different injury on duty pay.
I move the board votes to support Article 33.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0 to adopt.
Under Article 34, you'll recall the Director of Public Works is here asking the board to expand the snow and ice on sidewalk bylaw. The current section is store, office, or public place, and we're looking to extend that to things like hospitals, multifamily, over 3 units, hospitals, things like that. Churches.
Move we adopt Article 34.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0.
Back to the trash conversation, which we have virtually every meeting. One of our tools is that currently it's not a violation of the bylaw to put household waste in a public barrel. And so at least if it is, we could put signs on the barrels and ask people not to put household waste in them. You probably have seen them. I've noticed that the MBTA has them on all of their barrels over at the stations. So this is just one tool that we'll be able to use.
Okay. I move the board vote to support Article 35.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0 to adopt.
Under Article 36, I think the town engineer spelled out quite clearly what needs to happen at Honey Ridge Road.
I move the board vote to support Article 36. Second.
Discussion.
Yeah, just, Madam Chair, I know that there is an upcoming hearing on that. Is it still ripe to vote tonight? Or discussion, we put April 26th?
That's when they're coming back.
Oh.
I think so. It's certainly the board's discretion. All of the residents on
Have
Hutter Ridge have
signed.
signed.
Right.
So-
I'm fine with it. I just wanted to make sure
don't think
that
it's a problem.
we didn't need that procedural hearing.
I presume we could always revote if we had to, but it seems like
Correct.
signaling our intention,
Yes.
given all the residents have signed, would let us do the video and could acknowledge that it's still happening, but...
Yep, that's fine with me, as long as we're
Okay.
procedurally correct. Aye.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? 5-0 to adopt.
So Articles 37 and 38 are intended for the same purpose, which is to recognize the state law change that changed the method by which the Housing Authority membership is constituted. Used to be 4 members with a 5th appointed by the governor, and now there needs to be 1 who is a tenant member appointed by the select board. We currently had, this happened last year, and we're going to have to file this waiver again in the spring. We had a tenant member, so the board agreed to support the filing of a waiver that you didn't need to support somebody, appoint somebody. There was no Housing Authority seat up in this April. So these 2, 1 for the bylaws and 1 for the charter, would bring the composition methodology for the Housing Authority in line with state law.
Is there a motion?
Yeah, I move the board vote to support Article 37.
Is there any reason why we couldn't support 37 and 38 together, if you wish?
And Article 38.
Second.
Do we need 2 seconds?
I'll take 1 second to support both. Is there a second?
Second.
There was a second, right? Okay. In another year, will we be at the point where that position will come up, and then we would be appointing to be in the new regularized structure? I just don't remember how that
I'm
timing
going to have
works.
to do the math on that.
Okay.
I think you can decide at that point because there is a tenant member.
Okay. All right. Any further questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We will adopt both articles, 5-0.
The Needham Retirement Board has asked for an increase from $14,000 to $16,000 per year for the COLA allowance. I would note that in Massachusetts, public pensions do not have a regular cost of living adjustment. The only cost of living adjustment that can be granted by the Retirement Board on an annual basis is 3% maximum and 3% only on the first $14,000 of somebody's pension. So while the pension is a tremendous benefit, its power is eroded by inflation. And so there's very few tools that the Retirement Board can use, but this one would bring that limit from $14,000 to $16,000, provide additional modest increase for pensioners.
I'll move that we adopt Article 39 as is.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0 to adopt.
And the final article under the annual requiring your consideration is the citizens petition by Mr. Siegenthaler.
Do we need to take a position? This is always the question that I think about on citizens petitions.
I guess, Madam Chair, I was thinking the same thing. I just know that it would be, for our resources for enforcement, would be taxed, in my opinion. So I think this should be looked at as far as the public way is concerned. I think as written, I think enforcement would be an issue, as well as I have my own issues regarding private property. But I think as far as the town's concerned, there is a financial interest with as far as the enforcement, and if it's not enforced, it's going to come right back to this board to ask why it's not being enforced. So I'm prepared to vote no on it, but if the board feels that no position is necessary, I can look at that direction as well.
Other thoughts?
Those are my thoughts, too.
I was going to say, I'm actually in a similar place, so I would vote no or no position.
Yeah, same. Probably no position. I would probably go with over no, just because it will be taxing, it would be complicated, but I don't know if he's given us enough information to say specifically no yet, so no position is what I would do.
So I think we probably would have enough, I would think we have enough information to take a no position, but town meeting will certainly have a position on this, and so I don't know that we need to take a position. They will be up or down. Shall we take no position? Somebody would need to make a motion to take no position. So
I motion to take no position on this article.
Make a no motion or a yes motion, and then we vote against it or we vote for no.
I think the Finance Committee voted no position. That's a legitimate position.
I just made the motion.
Madam Chair, just a question for Kate. Just say this did pass. Can you just logistically, what would we have to do as far as enforcement, fines, bylaw, notice, the police?
Many of these types of situations are complaint-driven, so I would imagine that if an analogy might be charitable signs that are placed in the wrong location. If there's a way to contact the person who has the sign, you can contact them and ask them not to do it again. I'm not sure that's somebody who has distributed hundreds and hundreds of things is going to go back and pick them up. So I'm not sure how it's going to be enforced. And enforcement by complaint does tend to make people feel like it's not being universally enforced. Right. So it's a very difficult situation.
And I guess there's many driveways, where 5 or 10 feet in the driveway would be perfectly fine and not get on the public way. You have a 20-foot setback in Needham. So I just think the number's a little bit, it's arbitrary. So I guess I'm changing my mind. I'd vote against it, but I'd move that we not support this article in the warrant.
So I think we have a motion to take no position.
Okay, that's fine.
I don't know that it got seconded.
Okay. I started talking a lot, so it did not get
seconded.
Right.
Okay.
So we have a motion to take no position. Is there a second for that motion?
Sure.
Yes? All right. Any further discussion on taking no position? All those in favor of taking no position, please say.
Can I just
Yes.
still ask the question? I guess I'm just wondering, since the Needham Times is no longer in print, it just doesn't seem to me that there's an overwhelming urgency on this, or a need for sort of legislation about it. And I do think that the enforcement does seem a little dicey, like it would be hard to put into practice. This prevents it from going to town meeting, though?
It doesn't. It will go to
It will go just without our approval.
Right.
Okay. Then I would be inclined to vote no.
You'd be inclined to vote
to not approve it.
To not support it.
To not support it, sorry.
So,
Okay.
Not to support it.
All right, so we have a motion that's on the table to take no position, which people could choose to vote no on, in which case we'll have another motion if it's voted down.
Right.
If people vote yes on the motion to take no position, that means we will take no position. So there is a motion on the floor to take no position. People who are in favor of taking no position should say yes.
Yes.
Yes. Aye, can we say aye?
You can say aye. People who are opposed to taking no position should say yes. Right?
Nay, yes.
You can say nay.
Nay.
Nay. I'm going to go with the no's on this one. So we'll vote that one down. Mr. Borelli, do you have a motion?
Yes, I move that we do not support adoption of Article 40.
Okay.
Second.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Discussion.
I agree with it. I think the petition is kind of ridiculous. But I think there's something that we allow citizens petition to go in front of town meeting.
Correct,
It's,
yeah.
you know, let it float on town meeting. We haven't done the work. We haven't done the research on this. This isn't our thing to present. And so, sort of a rule of thumb, I always thought, citizens petition should go to town meeting unimpeded.
So nothing stops it from going to town
Yeah,
meeting
correct.
unimpeded.
I just don't, you know, do we need to put the tank? But I do agree it's a flawed petition. I'm just talking process.
Okay.
And
All
Madam Chair, I'm sorry. I would tend to agree with some, I think some of those that we have, but I think when there is a definite impact to the town, if this were enforced, I think we can weigh in. But I do think certain, especially sometimes the non-binding resolutions, we should just let go to town meeting, looking how that's in retrospect, I should say. Hindsight's 20/20.
But this would require us to enforce.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's right.
Oh, I gotcha. So it's not just...
So it's not a non-binding
Yeah,
it's binding.
citizens petition. It's binding and would require the town enforce it. So that makes it, I think, a little bit more complicated, for sure. Any further questions or discussion? All right, we are now voting on a motion to take a position not to adopt the citizens petition. All those in favor of not adopting, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed to not adopting? All right, 5-0 not to adopt.
Okay. We'll turn now, Madam Chair, to the special town meeting. First item for your consideration, funding of the collective bargaining agreement. It's under tab 7 with the Needham Fire Union that the board approved at the last meeting,
Was that our last meeting?
or a prior meeting. Had a special meeting.
That's right. That was the April 5th meeting or whatever day that was, yes. So there is there a motion for that?
I move the board vote to support Article 1, the second time.
And a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? 5-0 to adopt.
And under Article 2, fund the collective bargaining agreement with the Needham Police Union, as the board earlier this evening voted to support.
Okay.
Move to support Article 2.
Second.
Any discussion? In this case, all in favor?
Aye.
Everyone opposed? 5-0 to adopt. The collective, number 3?
Yep.
Oh.
Madam Chair, can we take 5 minutes?
Yep.
Yeah, thank you.
5-minute stretch? Okay.
Under Article 3, Madam Chair, we don't have agreement with the police superior officers yet, but we're hoping to have it by your next meeting.
So we will not vote on that tonight?
It's not
We'll
ready.
wait until we have an agreement?
Correct. But under Article 4, the petition to exempt the police department from civil service as drafted by town council, that is the board's goal. That I would believe that's ready.
I move to adopt Article 4 as is.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0 to adopt.
So, Madam Chair, under Article 5, the question is whether you wanted me to try to arrange for planning board representatives to come to the meeting on the 26th. I would note this really was an item that the board had brought the planning board and asked them to consider. Just a few items that we've been digging into the licensing. I just want to make sure that we will have something for you before town meeting that's more fleshed out than this, but just so that it's clear, there's something, the ABCC issues a farmer brewery license, so they issue that independent of us, and that allows sales of off-premises consumption. The board then issues a farmer series pouring permit, which I believe is a Section 19 license, so it's not a restaurant license, it's not an off-premises package store license, it's something sort of quasi in between under these regulations. The farmer brewer can sell beverages at retail if they were produced by the or for the brewer and sold under the brewery name. And again, the board's authority is under Chapter 138, Section 19, or Section, not Section 12 or Section 15. What the board will need to do is to discuss amending, if this passes, discuss amending your regulations that would contemplate this farmer brewery license scheme. And that would include things like what standards you would want to apply to it, like the standards we have for training and for hours of operation and those kinds of things. You could also impose standards with respect to food sales, which we have currently. We have an item that would cause you to investigate a restaurant that had more than 35% of its sales for alcohol, for instance. So we would expect that the board would take, if this passes, that the board would take this up in the regular course of business after town meeting to change your regulations. But I don't know who has this article. Matt?
I do.
We can have all of those items laid out as to what the board would have to do, but I just wanted to make it clear that we have been looking into the licensing and what the board's role would be in that.
So I think at this point, this idea about having a brew pub was something that I think originated with our board, or it may have been coming up with the planning board in a similar time frame. It was something that we were collectively interested in seeing happen. It seems that we understand now that because of the licensing issues, we would have to make some other changes so that we can put the practices in place around this. I am wondering a little bit if town meeting will want to understand all those issues in context when they're looking at the zoning, to really understand what they're getting into. I think there are certainly questions that are coming from people. And I believe I've also understood there is similarly some proposed zoning change of uses. So it's not just adding a brew pub, it's also deleting some other uses that I'm currently understanding is in place, that there have been some questions about, that the planning board is still talking to people about. So the choices for this board could be certainly to hold on taking a position, or so let me leave it at that, to hold on taking a position until we have somebody come in from the planning board, or the planning board may reach the point where they decide that this should wait until maybe the fall, and maybe we can put the package together of all of it and be able to talk to citizens about what the whole picture looks like. at once, and it does seem that people would like to understand the whole picture.
So we will have more information for you in writing before your meeting about the licensing. There's certainly communities all around us that have done it. It just means that the board has to amend its licenses as it did with, for instance, package stores, right? But I think it does make sense to have a conversation with planning board folks on the 26th.
So then let's try to get them in on the 26th, then we'll at least hold until then to make a final call on this.
I support that.
Okay? Okay. Thank you, everybody.
I just have two quick items, Madam Chair, under the town manager's report. As you know, the town common will be unavailable this summer, and we are proposing, as we have talked about, a beautiful tent. The parklets are already installed over near Greensfield, and at the end of March, the Park and Recreation Commission voted to support what this board had done last year, which would be to allow consumption of alcohol takeout from restaurants at the patios like you had done. So the common is under the jurisdiction of this board, and Greensfield is under the jurisdiction of the Park and Recreation Commission. It's my intent to make sure it's very clear to patrons that this was to support restaurants in the sale of to-go alcohol and not for tailgating, Little League, I guess. So really grateful for the commission for their support, because it was really very, very much used at the common last year. Just a couple other things on the communications front. We're kicking off our citizen community survey. So we'll be sending out, Paulco, which is our vendor, will be sending out 2,800 postcards and then packets. They do the statistically random survey. And then we are putting it online in May. After that survey is done, we'll put it online for anybody who wants to participate, and we'll push that out through all of our channels. And then Thursday, April 14th, which is tomorrow, our redesigned website goes live, so I think everybody will be very excited. Our mobile app goes live tomorrow too, and you can get the mobile app at the App Store or on Google Play. So very, very excited, a culmination of a lot of work.
What's the name of the mobile app?
I assume it's Town of Needham. Do you know? We'll be pushing out on our social media platforms the name.
Excellent.
The current one is Town of Needham. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Kate. That brings us, it must be 8 o'clock. That brings us to a board discussion about our meeting location. So, in theory, we're headed to a new stage of the pandemic, in theory. And so one of the questions that we thought we would just explore with the board is, we have been meeting, when we've been meeting in person up here in Powers Hall. We met last week, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, whenever it was, in the Select Board chambers for Dan's last meeting. So specifically for Dan's last meeting, we made a decision to go downstairs. We're back up here. It was the dog hearing, which definitely had the potential to warrant a larger space. But the question is, how do board members feel about being in one or the other at this point in the pandemic? Historically, this board has met down in the Select Board chambers. I think we do feel that those chambers are certainly somewhat more intimate, and we do think that being face-to-face with the people who we're talking to is a good situation, or a better situation, for conversation that is respectful and civil and all of those things. Certainly being here in Powers Hall and having people here in Powers Hall is a step better than it is entirely on Zoom. So each of those are degrees of magnitude. But beyond that, I recognize that this particular time might also be a challenging time, as we're watching case rates go up again at the moment, and people are trying to think in any given space what their individual risk is. We did have a question, or some questions that came from a community member. I believe it's my understanding that ventilation all over Town Hall is at the same equal high level, so whether we're talking this room or down in the chambers. And we do run MERV 13 filters in Town Hall and in other facilities since the town invested in ventilation during the pandemic. So that is actually not a difference between the two spaces, and it more relates to the matters that might be on our agenda and how many people we might expect would attend in any given week. So with that, let me be quiet and listen to you.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Matt.
I will start. So, Select Board chambers are our home. That's where we were. It would come up here for the large meetings, as we know, but this is a hall that's used for many things, including town meeting and Great Hall Series, and I just think it's important to go back to that room when we can, if we have hearings that aren't large like tonight, and just go back there. I think it's a better ambiance. It's, even tonight it was hard to see people because of the monitor in front of me. And, I understand the pandemic, and I think that's going to be something that's going to continue over the years. But I think we get to a point that we have to say we're ready. I know people are back at work, staff is back at work here, in maybe even smaller quarters than we are. And the circulation rate, I'm assuming the Board of Health would be fine the way that is set up. So I just think it's time to move back into our chambers, and if there are different meetings that require or make people feel uncomfortable, we can come up here for larger gatherings. But I think a lot of us have been to gatherings, tight gatherings, thought nothing of it or maybe something of it, but I think it's time to get back to business, and I think our business is in our chambers for those reasons. So, thank you.
Yep. I just wanted to say I'd be in favor of going back to the chambers since I never really had a time in the chambers except for one time with Sir Dan Matthews. And it would kind of feel good to kind of go back to how things somewhat were before we got into the pandemic and where we are now, and have other use of the space, other people be able to use it when necessary, but also reserving this for larger meetings or hearings and things like that. So I agree with that.
Kevin?
I think big spaces are daunting, and they're more imposing. And I think that's not something we want to communicate to people. I think sometimes this hall is beautiful, it's great, it's cavernous. It sometimes feel like the Wizard of Oz, and Tin Man to be at the end trembling. I think the chambers downstairs are much more accessible. I think it's an issue of tone, that we're much more at the same level in a smaller room, yes, but sort of all in it together. And I think I like that message better.
Okay. Heidi, this is your first night, so, well, it's fabulous in here, I have to say. But I will also note that with the exception of staff, we're sitting in a gigantic empty room. So as a matter of tone, I don't have a basis for comparison, so I'll accede to the majority. Okay. So I think collectively what I'm hearing is the board would actually like to move back downstairs. And we will continue to monitor our agendas to see when we have something that we believe will be an active evening. If that's the case, then we will look at coming upstairs so that we do have a situation that's more roomy when we expect a greater number of people. We do know that when we have a large number of people in the select board chambers, it does get tricky getting in and out of the rows if you're not sitting in the front row. So
we will leave that up to the chair and vice chair to make those tough decisions.
Difficult decisions, right, in consultation with the town manager.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for your input. I appreciate it. We are up to the section on committee reports. I don't know if the prior chair heard requests to give a committee report from anybody, or if anybody has a committee report.
I did not.
I don't have any committee reports this evening. So then that leads us to item 8 on our agenda, which is an executive session. I do note that we would look at an executive session for exception 3 to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting would have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body, and the chair so declares, and the chair does. And exception 6, to consider the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property if the chair declares that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the public body, and again, the chair so declares, not to return to open session prior to adjournment. I would wonder if there's such a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? One second, people. All right. Our vice chair has asked me if we can please go back and revisit the first agenda item that the town manager brought us, the memorandum of agreement for the police union. All right. You will recall that we had a 4-to-1 vote at that time, and Mr. Nelson has now gotten some additional information. So I'm going to turn it over to him for a second.
Yes, thank you so much, Madam Chair. After getting additional information and receiving more answers to questions than I had privy to that, I feel inclined to vote yes on that and not nay.
So if the board would be willing, could we go back and look at that motion again? I'm not sure which page it is on our book.
I'll withdraw my motion for executive session at this time, Madam Chair.
Hold that thought. Right. Thank you. So this, right. So the suggested motion at the time was that the board approve and sign the memorandum of agreement between the town and the Needham Police Union for FY22 and FY23 to 2025. Would someone like to make that motion?
Madam Chair, you probably should have a motion to reconsider. Motion to reconsider?
A motion to reconsider.
Yeah. I move we reconsider.
A second.
Second. All in favor of reconsideration? Say
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, we'll reconsider that motion. So now, is there a motion that the board approve and sign the memorandum of agreement between the town and the Needham Police Union for FY 2022 and FY 2023 to 2025?
So moved.
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 5-0 to adopt the MOU. Thank you. Now, Mr. Borelli, I would welcome your motion again.
So moved. Same motion for executive session, exception 3 and exception 6.
Second.
And a second. Any discussion? This will require a roll call vote because it's going into executive session. All right, so Ms. Frail? Aye. Mr. Nelson?
Aye.
Mr. Keene?
Yes.
Mr. Borelli?
Aye.
And the chair votes yes. So we are going into executive session, not to return to public session. Thank you, everybody.
Coverage of the Needham Select Board is brought to you by Louise Condon Realty, representing buyers and sellers since 1985.